Chapter 1725. As the long sword was unsheathed, Song Jifan's aura grew stronger. Light shone down from the sky and enveloped his body, slowly entering his body and the long sword he was unsheathing. His body and the sword seemed to have become one. He had truly reached the realm of being one with the sword. The sword was shining brightly, dispersing the darkness around the black blade. Bang! With a muffled sound, the black blade and the shining long sword clashed. Both of them took a step back and stopped in the void, staring at each other in shock. Chu Li's expression was solemn. Song Jifan's sword was shining brightly as if he was holding a light sword. His face could not be seen clearly, but it had become one with him. It was as if he was the sword and the sword was him. It was hard to tell them apart. Obviously, he had cultivated an antique swordsmanship. Chu Li speculated that it was the heaven-murdering tactic. This was the heaven-murdering tactic that he had been desperately hoping to obtain. With this tactic, along with his heaven-murdering sword and heaven-murdering three forms, he might be able to defeat the spirit tiger. This time, he came back to plan for the heaven-murdering tactic. He did not expect Song Jifan to cultivate it. It seemed that the tactic was very powerful. Back then, Song Jifan could only pretend to be dead when he faced the celestial being. Now, he could fight with the celestial being, and they seemed to be evenly matched. What martial art is this? Meng Xiaoqi scoffed. The light around him suddenly brightened. Heaven-murdering tactic, Song Jifan said proudly. Meng Xiaoqi frowned. Heaven-murdering tactic? I've never heard of it. Song Jifan scoffed. You're just ignorant. Your demonic blade technique is also ordinary. Take another strike from me. The light sword in his hand suddenly lit up. In the next moment it was already at Meng Xiaoqi's chest. Meng Xiaoqi slashed at Song Jifan's neck. He ignored the long sword that was stabbing at him. He was risking his life to kill Song Jifan. Bang! Song Jifan waved his sword to block the long sword. Both of them disappeared in a flash. In the next moment, they appeared in the void 10 meters away. They frowned and stared at each other helplessly. They all felt that they couldn't win. Although Song Jifan's cultivation level was lower than Meng Xiaoqi's, he benefited from the power of the heaven-killing art, which made up for the difference in strength. Meng Xiaoqi was better, but he couldn't do anything to the heaven-killing art. Bang 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 bang! The two of them exchanged more than 10 moves in a row. Their swords and sabers clashed, but they were unable to do anything to each other. Chu Li suddenly thrust out his god-slaying sword. Bang! The brilliance around Song Jifan suddenly soared, and then he sneered. Despicable guy! Meng Xiaoqi also staggered with a pring sound as if he was drunk. Immediately after, his entire body shone brightly and returned to normal. He stared coldly at Song Jifan. What a good murdering heaven incantation! Chu Li's expression changed slightly. Song Jifan was attacked by his own god-punishing sword, but Meng Xiaoqi was attacked by Song Jifan. However, Song Jifan's attack was formless, but he could feel that it was similar to the god-punishing sword. This murdering heaven incantation could actually be like his own god-punishing sword. Not only could it attack the soul, but it could also become one with the sword. It must be able to use the power of the sword to strengthen himself. He suddenly understood why Song Jifan was looking for the murdering heaven incantation. It was because the murdering heaven incantation was the hardest and sharpest sword in the world. With the power of this sword, he was truly invincible and no one could hurt him. When he thought of this, he felt a chill in his heart. It was too difficult to obtain this murdering heaven incantation. In this situation, it was almost impossible to provoke the two of them to fight each other. Chu Li suddenly raised his voice and shouted, "Fellow from the demonic blade sect, you must be activating some secret technique. How long can you last?" Meng Xiaoqi sneered, "Good lad, I almost forgot about you." He slashed down with his blade and suddenly disappeared. The blade and him appeared in front of Chu Li. The edge of the blade was already close to Chu Li's neck. Chu Li's body was limp and powerless. He did not even try to dodge, and could only watch helplessly as his head was about to be cut off. Humph! Song Jifan snorted angrily. The tip of his sword hit the long blade and immediately stabbed at Meng Xiaoqi's chest. Meng Xiaoqi did not dodge and slashed at Song Jifan's head. "Bishop!" Chu Li shouted softly and suddenly stretched out his left arm to block the long blade. TSS! The long blade easily cut through his left forearm as if it was paper. Half of his forearm fell to the ground. When Song Jifan heard Chu Li's shout, an idea flashed in his mind. His long sword suddenly sped up and he ignored the long blade on his neck. Ugh! Meng Xiaoqi's eyes suddenly widened and he barely managed to move sideways to avoid the blade. The center of his chest was pierced by the long sword. His entire body's spirit instantly surged towards the sword as if he wanted to devour it. Song Jifan sneered and turned his wrist to twist the long sword. Meng Xiaoqi swung his blade down. At this time, Chu Li fell again and the long blade pressed towards Song Jifan. Song Jifan took a step back to avoid it and at the same time, he pulled Chu Li up. His turbulent inner energy continuously drilled into Chu Li's body. It was the profound cultivation of the art of eternal agility that repaired Chu Li's arm. Chu Li's spirit was lifted. He felt his empty body quickly recover and quickly said, "Thank you very much, Bishop." Song Jifan shook his head and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared behind Meng Xiaoqi and stabbed him with his sword. Meng Xiaoqi turned his head and blocked the tip of the sword with his blade. Bang! The long blade retreated and hit his wound. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He glared at Chu Li and suddenly disappeared in a flash. "Bishop, hurry up and chase after him. His secret technique must be losing its effect soon. He can't escape," Chu Li hurriedly shouted. Song Jifan glanced at everyone and slowly nodded. "Be careful." After he finished speaking, he slowly merged into the void and disappeared. Chu Li let out a long sigh and looked at Elder Fong, who had become a middle-aged woman. "Elder, it's my fault." "It's not your fault." Elder Fong shook her head and looked solemn. "I was careless. I stayed on the floating mountain and underestimated the heroes of the world." She looked at the corpse and head on the ground and shook her head. "Think of a way to destroy his demonic blade so that his soul can be freed and return to the Outland. Bishop will definitely be able to kill that fellow," Chu Li hurriedly said. "I hope so." Elder Fong slowly nodded. She dared not underestimate the heroes of the world anymore. This guy from the demonic blade sect was actually a celestial being. He was really lucky to be alive this time and not have his soul destroyed. He also had to rely on Bailey Na's help. If it was not for Bailey Na desperately blocking the attack, he would have died and disappeared. As she thought of this, she felt a chill in her heart and looked at Chu Li with a clear gaze. She suddenly wavered. Was she really going to leave the floating mountain and conquer the world? Today, only 4 masters had died, but he was already a bit disappointed and worried. The road to dominating the world must be full of thorns. No one knew how many white bones were needed to pave the road. How many disciples of the Changshan denomination could survive? As she thought of this, she suddenly had the intention to retreat and suddenly disagreed with Song Jifan's plan. The floating mountain was extremely comfortable. Everyone lived carefreely and then continued living in the Outland. This was actually a good life. Why did they have to conquer the world and destroy the peaceful life of the floating mountain? "Elder, are we going back?" Chu Li's words broke her thoughts. Elder Fong sorted out her thoughts and sighed. She slowly said, "Bring them back. Let's go." Everyone nodded and collected the corpses and heads respectively. Then, they returned to the floating mountain. When they returned to the floating mountain, it naturally attracted people to watch and discuss. Chapter 1726. As soon as Chu Li returned to the bedroom in the courtyard, he immediately began to channel. The life and death scripture was quickly activated, and he quickly aged, then died, and finally began to grow from a baby. His arm had already grown back, and time passed quickly on his body. Soon, he grew from a baby to his current appearance, returning to his original state. His original arm had already returned to normal, and there was no feeling of being cut off. There was no sense of weakness, as if it had never been cut off. At this time, 2 hours had passed. Chu Li sat on the bed, recalling the previous scene, and still felt a little frightened. The power of these two men's sword and knife was too strong, and he was no match for them. His strongest god-slaying sword was also ineffective against them, and it was no different from cutting off his arm. However, he still had a trace of confidence that the demon blade could not break his indestructible body of titanium. If he had not temporarily stopped the indestructible body of titanium, the demon blade might not have been able to cut off his palm and arm. After all, the demon blade was scary because of its inner energy, not the black wooden blade. However, he dared not determine if the indestructible body of titanium could block the heaven-cursing technique. The heaven-cursing technique that Song Jifan displayed was too powerful. Not only was it strong in attack, but it was also strong in defense. If it could block his strongest god-slaying sword, what else could hurt him? He suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, he returned to his original appearance, and arrived at the top of a mountain. Even if they were Devis and enlightened masters, he could still sense them with the heavenly star insight and the all-seeing eye. Because the demon blade was stained with his blood, the connection between it and his blood was stronger. However, the feeling was vague, and not as accurate as usual. Bam 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 bam. The muffled sound was endless. Song Jifan and Meng Xiaoqi floated in the sky above a bare mountain. The light sword and the black blade were fighting, and the pitch-black blade light and the bright sword light shone in the sky. Only the blade light and the sword light could be seen, but the two figures could not be seen. Under the sword light and blade light, the two could not be seen clearly, and only a vague shadow could be seen. Chu Li stood at the top of the mountain, watching the two fight from afar. He wanted to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, and take advantage of it. He silently retreated a certain distance and performed the life and death scripture. A trace of his psyche drilled out and landed on a tree. Using the tree as his ears and eyes, he clearly saw the situation of the two fighting and their conversation. He did not dare to get close to avoid being discovered by the two of them. The deity field covered a large area, and once he got close, he would be discovered by the two of them. At that time, it was very likely that the two of them would tacitly get rid of him first before continuing to fight. As time passed, the two of them did not show any signs of weakening. The saber light and the sword light were still shining, and they were equally matched. It seemed that it would be difficult to determine the victor even if this battle continued for a long time. Song Jifan was a little anxious. In fact, he was barely holding on. The heaven-murdering incantation consumed too much internal energy. Even though he had the unaging live forever technique, which constantly extracted longevity and converted it into internal energy, he had already become a 100-year-old old man. If things went on like this, it was very likely that his lifespan would be completely depleted. At that time, even if he didn't die, he would still die. No one could do anything about it. No matter how powerful the ageless live forever technique was, it couldn't regenerate lifespan out of nothing. However, he was only slightly anxious, not too flustered. As long as he moved the battlefield to a crowded place, he could use the ageless live forever technique to devour a few experts, and he would be able to recover his lifespan and continue fighting. Meng Xiaoqi was even more anxious. He had broken the seal for 2 hours, and he had lost 20 years of his lifespan. The time he could stay in the world was only 100 years, and it had already exceeded 2 hours. The 4th hour meant that 40 years had already been deducted. There were only 60 years left in 100 years, and if they continued to fight, he might only be left with 40 years. At that time, the gains would not make up for the losses. When he thought of that, he had the intention to retreat. Cult Master Song, let's stop here for today, he said in a deep voice. He suddenly appeared 100 feet away in a flash and shook his head. It's useless for us to continue fighting. It's hard to tell who's better. It is indeed hard to tell who's better. Song Jifan snorted as he sheathed his sword. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief and said indifferently, however, you have to be careful. I've just cultivated the heaven-murdering incantation, and my attainment is still shallow. When I'm more proficient, I won't even need 10 moves to deal with you. It'll be as easy as flipping my hand. Meng Xiaoqi sneered. 10 moves. You don't believe me? Song Jifan said indifferently. 10 moves is still too much. If I get the heaven-murdering sword, 1 move is enough to kill you. Even Song Wuji can't kill a celestial in 1 move. Meng Xiaoqi shook his head and laughed. Where does your confidence come from? Could it be that you can surpass Song Wuji? You've seen my ancestor? Song Jifan raised his eyebrows. Yes. Meng Xiaoqi nodded. However, I can't tell you because of the heavenly rules. If you want to see him, then go to the heavens. What's the point of staying in this world? The spiritual energy is scarce, the aura is turbid, and life is bitter and short. It's really a kind of torture. The sky beyond heaven is so good, why did you come down? Song Jifan sneered with an expression of, I'd be a fool to believe you. Meng Xiaoqi snorted. Do you think I want to come down? Song Jifan said. Why exactly did you come down? It can't be to revive the demonic blade sect, right? That's right. Meng Xiaoqi nodded. The demonic blade sect will be revived in my hands. Let me tell you in advance, not only my demonic blade sect, but many ancient sects will also have celestial beings coming down. What are you guys going to do? Song Jifan said sternly. This was not good news for him. If he had the heaven-killing sword, then it would be fine. Even if a celestial being came, he would still kill them. Killing a celestial being was like killing a dog. Although it was not that easy to kill a celestial being, it was enough to kill them. When a celestial being came here, he only had half of his power left. He was stronger than a celestial being and could not easily kill a celestial being, so he was not afraid of a celestial being. It was a pity that he did not have the heaven-killing sword now. It was difficult to fully display the power of the heaven-killing incantation. It was really frustrating. The first thing to do was to take back the heaven-killing sword. This was the most important thing, and he could not wait any longer. Thinking of this, he was not in the mood to tangle with Meng Xiaoqi anymore. He said in a deep voice, How many more celestial beings are coming down? I don't know. Meng Xiaoqi smiled faintly. Your Changshan sect is not considered a big sect. If you want to rise again, you have to see if the other sects agree. In my opinion, you should give up. Humph, then let's wait and see. Song Jifan said coldly. Meng Xiaoqi said, All right, then let's see whether your Changshan sect is more powerful or my demonic blade sect is more powerful. Goodbye. He swung his blade. A black light flashed and his figure suddenly disappeared. Song Jifan stared at the direction where he disappeared, guarding against a sudden flash to ambush him. After a while, he sighed in relief. His face darkened. Originally, he thought that after cultivating the heaven-killing incantation, even if he could not kill an enlightened being like killing a chicken, there was almost no opponent in the world. He never thought that a celestial being would come, and more than one at that. It was really disappointing. He immediately thought of Chu-Li. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly. His gloomy face turned into a smile. This time, he would finally avenge his previous humiliation. He would torture Chu-Li and force him to hand over the heaven-killing sword. Not only would he hand over the heaven-killing sword, but he would also kill him. Before killing him, he would first snatch his woman. Thinking of this, Song Jifan could not help but laugh to the sky. He suddenly disappeared in a flash and appeared outside the public house in the next moment. He was sure that the heaven-killing sword was hidden in Goddess Attraction Mountain, but he did not want to enter Goddess Attraction Mountain. As far as he knew, Goddess Attraction Mountain was guarded by a supreme-rank spirit beast, the Golden Dragon. This Golden Dragon would not help Goddess Attraction Mountain kill people, but it would protect Goddess Attraction Mountain. Anyone who dared to be presumptuous on Goddess Attraction Mountain would not have a good ending. Most people did not know this secret, but he did. Otherwise, he would have killed his way to Goddess Attraction Mountain and snatched the heaven-killing sword. Chapter 1727. Chu Li, come out! Song Jifan yelled. He wore a blue shirt and his face was as white as jade. His golden crown shone under the sun, giving off an air of nobility. The public house was located at the north gate of Chongming Town. Although there were protectors guarding it, there were many people coming and going. Most of them came to admire the elegance of the public house. The public house was an extraordinary existence in Chongming Town. Outsiders who came to Chongming Town would feel like they were walking in vain if they did not see the public house. Song Jifan's voice was like thunder that exploded in the sky above Chongming Town. People immediately looked towards the direction of the public house. They knew that someone came to provoke Chief Chu Li again. They could not help but shake their heads. The people around the public house rushed over to see what was going on. Ever since Chu Li became famous, there were many people who came to challenge him. Most of the time, Chu Li did not even need to show up personally. The protectors of the public house would just send them away. The martial arts of the protectors of the public house were getting stronger and stronger. They could almost handle anyone who came to challenge them. These challengers wanted to become famous after one battle. They had good martial arts, but they were not the best. Stand down! Chu Li's voice rang throughout Chongming Town. The protectors who were about to rush forward to question him immediately took a few steps back and stood on the steps of the main entrance. They glared at Song Jifan fiercely and did not come any closer. Chu Li's authority was growing, and his orders were strictly enforced. Chu Li's white robe fluttered as he passed through the main gate of the public house. He came to the steps and looked at Song Jifan. He smiled. You still dare to come, Chief Song? Losing once is not enough. Do you want to come again? Chu Li, you will definitely die this time, Song Jifan said with his hand on the hilt of his sword. The aura around his body began to increase. This was to prevent Chu Li from suddenly using the god-slaying sword. As soon as Chu Li appeared, he used the heaven-killing scripture and his body became one with the sword. Although the sword on his waist could not be compared to the heaven-killing sword, it was still a rare sword. It could cut through iron like mud and could cut through hair. It was integrated with his body and reached an indestructible level. He was not afraid of Chu Li's god-slaying sword. Chu Li laughed. All right, you said the same thing the last time. What do you want to compete as? Swordsmanship. Song Jifan pressed on his sword and said coldly, Don't think that just because you won against me last time, you can always win. This time, Chu Li waved his hand and said, How about this, let's make a bet. Song Jifan snorted, What? Chu Li pointed at the long sword on his waist and smiled. This sword of yours is a treasure sword, right? Of course. Song Jifan humphed. It can cut through iron like mud. It's a real treasure sword. How is it compared to the heaven-killing sword? Chu Li asked. Song Jifan hesitated and shook his head. Of course not. Chu Li smiled. All right then. This sword of mine is the Crouching Tiger Divine Sword. It's a treasure sword that has killed a spirit tiger. What about yours? Shadow-bearing sword. Song Jifan snorted. The sword leaves no shadow. Well, if you defeat me, this Chengying sword is yours. Song Jifan said. Chu Li nodded. If that's the case, let's compete. This time, let's change the way we compete. I don't want people to say that I'm bullying you. How do we compete? Song Jifan frowned, feeling that something was wrong. Chu Li was full of tricks. He did not know what he was up to. It was better to be careful. Chu Li said, "This time, I won't fight back. If you can beat me within 10 moves, I'll admit defeat. If you can't beat me within 10 moves, I'll win. How about that?" Song Jifan's mind raced to see if there was a trap. Chu Li smiled. "I won't fight back. I'll either dodge or take it head-on. If I fight back, I'll admit defeat. Under such circumstances, if you can't beat me within 10 moves, isn't that considered a loss?" "Alright, you can't wear armor or use weapons." Song Jifan decided to play it safe. Chu Li laughed and shook his head. "I can't wear armor either?" "Of course." Song Jifan scoffed. "What if you're wearing treasured clothing? How can I hurt you?" Chu Li shook his head. "What about weapons? If you can't even use weapons, you might as well admit defeat. If you don't want to compete, then forget it. We'll see who's the real deal." Song Jifan sneered. He just wanted to force Chu Li to see what tricks he had up his sleeves. Chu Li thought about it and sighed. "I really can't do anything against a shameless guy like you." "Alright, then I won't use armor or weapons. My clothes don't have any armor, right?" "That's fine." Song Jifan scoffed. Chu Li nodded. Come, let everyone witness. 10 moves, Chief Song, make your move." "Watch my sword," Song Jifan shouted. His body suddenly shrunk as if he became shorter and thinner. Actually, his figure did not change, but it gave people the feeling that it was the 10th level of the sacrificial divine power. The enlightened master's field that he withdrew immediately spread out. The surrounding people only felt a turbulent force rushing towards them, like a huge wave crashing down. They could not help but be swept up into the air. Chu Li shook his head and waved his long sleeve. The people immediately landed on the ground lightly. The violent force dissipated and they felt like they were bathing in the spring breeze. They suddenly felt like they had narrowly escaped death. They could not help but fist salute Chu Li, thanking him for saving their lives. Chu Li said, "Chief Song, why do you have to use such a trick?" Song Jifan sneered and unsheathed the Qingying sword. It turned into a bright light and shot towards Chu Li. Chu Li raised his hand to block it. Bang! Amidst the muffled sound, Chu Li's palm flashed with a purple-gold light. It was as if his palm was made of purple gold and blocked the burning tip of the sword. The people could not see the appearance of the Qingying sword clearly. They could only see a light sword. The light of the sword reflected on Chu Li's purple-gold palm. His palm was slender and well-proportioned. It was very comfortable to look at. Chu Li raised his voice. "One move." Again. Song Jifan scoffed, his heart trembling. He never thought that someone could block his heaven-cursing scripture with flesh and blood. This sword was already at its peak. It was the 10th level of the sacrificial technique and the heaven-cursing scripture. Its power was unparalleled. Even a celestial would not dare to block this sword, but Chu Li was able to block it. Was he stronger than a celestial? When he thought of this, he was suddenly furious. He was a genius. He originally planned to cultivate the heaven-cursing scripture in half a year, but he did it in less than a month. It was really a gift from heaven. It was so fast that it was beyond his imagination. He admired himself even more. He never thought that he could not kill Chu Li. Could it be that Chu Li was born to be his nemesis and was specially made to restrain him? The anger in his heart surged and he attacked even more fiercely. He gathered all the energy in his body into the sword and stabbed it again. Bang! Chu Li still blocked the tip of the sword with his palm. He looked at Song Jifan calmly and shook his head. "This sword technique is the heaven-cursing scripture? It's an exaggeration. So the heaven-cursing scripture is only this powerful. How disappointing!" "Ah!" Song Jifan roared. His body suddenly lit up as if a flame was spewing out from his body. He stabbed again with his sword. Bang! Chu Li took a step back and removed the powerful force from the sword. His right palm flashed with a purple-gold light, almost turning into a pure purple color. Chapter 1728. Chu Li made up his mind. He did not expect his indestructible body of titanium to be so powerful that it could actually defend against the sky-murdering tactic. The power of the sky-murdering tactic came from inner energy, not the power of the sword. The sharpness of the sword was integrated into one's own inner energy, making it invincible. However, it was powerless against the indestructible body of titanium. The indestructible body of titanium could defend against the fire of Vermilion Bird and the spiritual energy of the Spirit Tiger. It could also defend against the sky-murdering tactic. After making up his mind, Chu Li naturally seized the opportunity to destroy Song Jifan's confidence. He wanted him to form a conditioned reflex, which was to fear him. He wanted him to know that he would fail if he met him. Song Jifan gritted his teeth. He did not expect his strongest martial art to be unable to defeat Chu Li. His original wishful thinking had become a joke. The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. The elation and excitement from before had turned into disappointment, despair, hatred, and pain. Chu Li laughed out loud. Could it be that this heaven-murdering tactic was broken by you? Did Song Wuji really kill many enlightened masters with the sky-murdering tactic? Each generation is worse than the previous. I'm sure Song Wuji saw this scene in the sky and wanted to be replaced. Shut up! Song Jifan roared angrily. His jade-like face contorted into a hideous expression. His eyes burned like fire. Suddenly, his left arm exploded with a bang. Then, like a flash of lightning, he instantly appeared behind Chu Li and stabbed at his back. Chu Li did not dodge. He only used his elbow to block. Bam! He took a step back and looked down. There was a small hole in the white robe. This white robe was given to him by Shao Qi. It was a treasured robe. It was usually untainted by dust. Now that it could not block this sword, it was clear how terrifying this sword was. The sky-murdering tactic lived up to its name. Chu Li was very distressed. He snorted angrily. That's all you got. Song Jifan was hit by Chu Li's elbow. His wrist was numb from the impact. In terms of the depth of his cultivation, Chu Li was slightly inferior. Even though he had mastered the tiger-taming tactic, it was still not as deep as Song Jifan. He was able to suppress him earlier because of the Godslayer. Now that the deity-slaying sword had lost its effect on him, it was still able to push him back. However, it was because of pure strength. The completion of the art of taming tiger had increased his strength by 3 times. Innate divine strength was no longer enough to describe it. Song Jifan was worried and said, "What kind of stupid martial arts is this?" Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "How many more moves do you have, cult leader Song? Watch out!" Song Jifan snorted angrily and turned into a beam of light again. Chu Li became one with his sword. His sword flashed and the cold lightning was dazzling. His figure could not be seen, only Chu Li's purplish-golden palm could be seen waving and blocking the cold lightning. 10 moves are up, right? Chu Li laughed out loud. Cult leader Song, if you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. Hand over your swords. Alright. Song Jifan's face was as red as a drunkard's. He stared deeply at Chu Li and said, "I will get this sword back." Chu Li could not help but laugh. Cult leader Song, you've already had your fill. I'm only responding to your attacks, and have yet to retaliate. Why don't I attack you for another 10 moves? If you can block it, you win? There's no need for that. Song Jifan knew that he could not do anything to Chu Li. He felt aggrieved, and just wanted to go back and continue his isolated cultivation so that he could improve his sky regicide sword to the state of perfection. He felt that he was just a little bit off. Although Chu Li looked relaxed and calm, he felt that he was just a little bit off. If he was just a little bit stronger, he would be able to break through his divine protective technique. Chu Li smiled and said, "Then, take this." Chu Li said and struck with his palm. It was as if his entire body became shorter. He squatted down and struck with his palm, covering up the feeling of being shorter. This palm was the Vajra palm. The purplish-golden brilliance circulated. It was light as a feather but strangely fast. It seemed like a casual palm had already hit Song Jifan's hand. Song Jifan realized that something was wrong and quickly countered with his palm. Both palms collided in a hurry. Bang! Chu Li stood firmly on the spot while Song Jifan flew backward and hit the wall across the street. Crash! The wall behind Song Jifan collapsed. Song Jifan was a little embarrassed. He floated up to avoid the falling stone and stood in the air, glaring at Chu Li. Chu Li shook his head. "Leader Song, if you're not satisfied, you can look for me again. This time, it doesn't count. Just treat it as a joke." As he spoke, he threw the long sword. Song Jifan steadily caught his Chengying sword and scoffed with a gloomy face. "What do you mean by this?" Chu Li shook his head. "Although your sword is good, it's not as good as my crouching tiger divine sword. Forget it, keep it for yourself. If you lose again, this sword will truly belong to me." "Fake generosity, how hypocritical!" Song Jifan sneered. However, he did not return the sword. The Chengying sword was the best treasure sword he found in the secret storage of the floating mountain. It really could cut through iron as if it was mud. It was so strong that no other sword could compare to it. If he lost this sword, the power of his sky regicide scripture would be weaker. Now, he could not break through Chu Li's defense. If it was a slightly weaker treasure sword, even if the sky regicide scripture was improved, it might not break through his defense. In order to turn the tables and truly defeat Chu Li, in order to obtain the sky regicide sword, he could throw away his pride. It was even better if Chu Li did not want the Chengying sword. He was already distressed, but this time, he was finally satisfied. Chu Li chuckled. "Looks like you don't want this sword. You should return it to me." Song Jifan hung the Chengying sword on his waist and raised his head. "I'll let you go this time. If it was a real life and death battle, killing you would be a piece of cake. It's just that because of the sky regicide sword, I can't kill you. Goodbye." Chu Li shook his head. "When it comes to shamelessness, only you, Leader Song." "Same to you." Song Jifan scoffed and instantly disappeared into the void. The surrounding people looked at Chu Li in admiration. They had heard rumors of him killing enlightened masters. This time, they saw him face an enlightened master with their own eyes. The enlightened master's crazy attacks could not do anything to him. He could send the enlightened master flying with one palm. Seeing was believing. This time, they had no doubts and doubts. They closed fist saluted one after another. Chu Li smiled and bowed to the crowd. Then, he floated back to the High Duke's public house. After meeting up with Xueling, he suddenly disappeared. The combination of the omniscient mirror and the heavenly star insight technique allowed him to suddenly appear in a small town. He saw Song Jifan, who was strolling around the town. Song Jifan's face was blank. He slowly walked on the bustling street. It was as if he was in a different world from the noise around him. His back was lonely. In front of Chu Li, he could not show his disappointment and pain. In front of the church members, including Elder Fong, he could not show his weakness. He had been hit and defeated again and again. He felt that he could not take it anymore. He needed to relax and get drunk. He wanted to find a woman who was as beautiful as Sun Mingyue and comfort him with her gentle words. He walked past one restaurant after another. However, he was not in the mood to get drunk. Finally, when he came to a restaurant, his gaze suddenly focused. He saw a woman dressed in white. Her face was covered with a white veil. Only a pair of bright eyes could be seen. Her eyes were as clear as water. They were exceptionally beautiful. His spirit was lifted. It was as if he saw Sun Mingyue. Could it be that Sun Mingyue was here? Chapter 1729. However, such a graceful and alluring body, a cold and aloof temperament, although not as good as Sun Mingyue's, was already a rare sight. She was much better than those mediocre women, and could enter his eyes. His confused and lonely thoughts immediately receded, and were replaced by excitement and excitement. He hurriedly took 2 steps forward and followed her into the restaurant. He arrived at the table where the woman was, and directly sat next to her. The woman sat there alone, propping her cheeks in contemplation, as if she had sunk into worry. Song Jifan felt pity for her, and wished he could go up to her and listen to her worries, so that he could help her solve her problems. Unfortunately, he knew that if he went forward rashly, he would definitely be regarded as a lecher. Although he had never been in a relationship with a woman, he knew this basic principle. As a bishop, every move of his had to be scrutinized by the congregation. He had always been as calm as an old man on the floating mountain, and did not break the rules at all. Therefore, he did not have any relations with women. He ordered a pot of wine and a few side dishes, and then sat next to the woman, pouring and drinking slowly, leisurely and at ease, while sizing up the woman. He could not see her face clearly with the white veil, but if it was time to eat, even the most powerful martial arts would have to take off the veil. Therefore, he wanted to see the woman's face clearly before deciding what to do. After a while, the waiter served the dishes. The woman in white gently took off the white veil, revealing a mediocre face. Song Jifan was instantly disappointed and sighed to himself. Yes, how many women in this world were there like Sun Mingyue? How could he be so lucky as to meet one? In this aspect, he was far less lucky than Chu Li. What a damn fellow! Thinking of this, he angrily stomped his feet and drank the wine in one gulp. Then, he continued to pour himself another cup and drank it in one gulp. Just like that, he drank the whole pot of wine in one go, and then ordered another pot. Pot after pot, he drank 10 pots of wine in a short while. Deliberately getting drunk, he did not use his inner energy at all. Instead, he purposely stopped his inner energy to prevent the alcohol from dissolving on its own. It was very difficult to get drunk with an enlightened master's body. Without his inner force, he had to drink 10 jars of strong liquor before he could get himself drunk. The waiter in the distance was a little frightened. At first, he was very happy when he saw that the customer had ordered so much wine. These were the best and most expensive wines in the shop, and he could make a lot of money. However, when he saw Song Jifan drinking so fiercely, he was a little worried. If he still wanted to fight after drinking, it would scare away a lot of customers, and it would be really troublesome. But seeing Song Jifan's expression, the waiter didn't dare to step forward to persuade him. He could only retreat to the side worriedly and stare at them. After drinking 10 jars of strong liquor, Song Jifan felt slightly tipsy. He felt an indescribable sense of enjoyment. He felt light as a feather, as if he was ascending to immortality. Everything became pleasing to the eye. Ha ha! He suddenly laughed heartily, and his voice was filled with heroic spirit. He glanced around and saw that everyone was looking at him in fear. Although he had suppressed his martial arts and prevented his inner energy from circulating to cure himself of the alcohol, he had forgotten to suppress it in his tipsy state. As a result, his laughter was mixed with the inner energy of an enlightened deity. How could an ordinary person withstand it? Fortunately, he only laughed twice. Everyone felt as if thunder had struck their ears and their hearts were about to jump out of their chests. They couldn't bear it. Song Jifan looked at their eyes and suddenly felt bored. So what if he was awe-inspiring in front of these people? So what if he was an enlightened deity? He still couldn't defeat Chu Li, and he still had to endure Chu Li's humiliation and mockery. Every time, he had to come forward and humiliate himself. When he thought of this, he hated himself even more. Bang! His eyes suddenly shot out electric light. He grabbed the long sword on the table and disappeared in a flash. Ding! His chest suddenly exploded, and 2 balls of white powder fell. It was the explosion of the tranquil pendant, which was used to protect his soul. Now that it had exploded, it was obvious that his soul had suffered a fatal attack. Despicable! Song Jifan snorted and stepped forward to face Chu Li. Chu Li appeared out of thin air, and the god-slaying sword was already stabbing forward. He didn't expect it to be blocked by the tranquil pendant. He shook his head helplessly. The sword in Song Jifan's hand suddenly shone brightly, but it exploded with a bang. You! Song Jifan immediately knew that the Tringying sword had been tampered with. He channeled the heaven-killing scripture at full force, and the Tringying sword couldn't withstand the power of the heaven-killing scripture and exploded. Chu Li chuckled. Chief Song, without the Tringying sword, how powerful is your heaven-killing scripture? Chu Li, it's your doing. Song Jifan clenched his teeth and stared at Chu Li angrily. He sneered. No wonder you were so kind to return the sword to me. I thought you really didn't like it. Chu Li shook his head. How can I not like such a precious sword? You're really despicable and shameless. Song Jifan shook his head. I didn't expect you to be such a person. I really overestimated you. Chu Li nodded. I'm such an unscrupulous person. Chief Song wanted to kill me, so I had to take the initiative. What other tricks will Chief Song have this time? The tranquil pendant has already shattered. What else can block the god-slaying sword? As he spoke, he materialized the god-slaying sword. There was originally only one sword in the void of his mind. After stabbing Song Jifan, it didn't work. Now, he needed a second sword. The power of the sword earlier was shocking. If not, 2 tranquil pendants wouldn't have exploded. This sword was 2 swords combined into one. Its power was shocking. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. It still didn't work. He needed a few words to materialize another sword. Song Jifan sneered. Do you think you've won? Chu Li said, without the Tringying sword, can the heaven-killing scripture still block me? Of course. Song Jifan said proudly. Chu Li, do you think you're the smartest? Chu Li frowned at him. Song Jifan took out a short sword. The blade was only the length of a forearm. The scabbard was ancient and colorful. A strong ancient aura rushed out. He shook the short sword proudly and sneered. Have you heard of this sword? The ancient Dragon Fang sword. Chu Li frowned and shook his head. Song Jifan scoffed. There's no harm in telling you. This Dragon Fang sword is said to be the tooth of a golden dragon. It's indestructible. It's even better than the Tringying sword. Chu Li laughed. How can a golden dragon have teeth? Who told you that a golden dragon has no teeth? Song Jifan said in disdain. You're a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain. Have you never seen a golden dragon? Chu Li shook his head. Song Jifan sneered. Then have a taste of the power of the Dragon Fang sword. He slowly pulled out the short sword. Suddenly, there was a flash of light. An even stronger force surged out and spread around his body. Chu Li felt this force and knew that he would have to return empty-handed today. It seemed that the Dragon Fang sword was real. Song Jifan, I underestimated him. I didn't expect him to hide his trump card. He didn't use his strongest sword when he fought with me. Bang! There was a muffled sound. The Dragon Fang sword in Song Jifan's hand shook and became brighter. It blocked the attack of the god-killing sword. Chu Li shook his head. As expected, the god-killing sword couldn't do anything to him. He originally wanted to take advantage of him being drunk to injure or knock him out. Then, he would read the heaven-killing scripture from his mind. Unfortunately, God's plans were not as good as his. He had done something to the Tringying sword. The flames of the vermilion bird and the energy of the spirit tiger had circled around the Tringying sword. When the extremely cold and intense force of the supreme spirit beasts passed through, the Chengying sword couldn't withstand it. If it encountered the heaven-killing scripture again, it would explode. Chapter 1730. He suddenly extended his hand and said, I really haven't seen the Dragon Fang before. Why don't you show me? Why, you still want to play tricks? Song Jifan sneered. How did you do it? You secretly swapped the Chengying sword, didn't you? Chu Li smiled. Yes, I swapped the Chengying sword while you were being hit. You're good. Song Jifan shook his head and scoffed. Unfortunately, you didn't succeed. I trusted you too much and was blind. Chu Li could not help but laugh. You trust my character? Now I know how despicable and shameful you are. I'm ashamed to be associated with you. Song Jifan sneered. You want to see the Dragon Fang? Chu Li nodded. Of course I want to broaden my horizons. All right. Song Jifan scoffed. Then give me the Sky Killer sword. I want to see it too. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. If you take the Sky Killer sword and use the Sky Killer scripture, how can I survive? Then you still want to see my Dragon Fang sword. Song Jifan sneered. Do you really think I'm a fool? I don't know what trick you used to destroy my Chengying sword, but you definitely won't have the chance to destroy my Dragon Fang sword. As he spoke, he swung his sword again. The Dragon Fang sword seemed to have suddenly lengthened. The length of the light sword was no different from a normal longsword, and its speed was as fast as lightning. Chu Li extended his left palm, which was purplish gold in color, and clapped. Bang! The muffled sound was like a boulder falling on a military drum. It was shocking. There was no one left in the restaurant. Under the aura of the enlightened God's field and the heaven-slaughtering script, even a grandmaster would not be able to withstand it, let alone a normal person. Even the waiter and the restaurant manager, who had a long face, had run out to avoid it. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Why waste your effort, Leader Song? You can't do anything to me. I want to see how long you can last. Song Jifan said coldly. Chu Li said, I also want to see how long you can last. The Sky Killer scripture must consume a lot of inner energy. I guess the Dragon Fang sword's endurance is also limited. You can't keep using the Sky Killer scripture, right? Nonsense. Song Jifan's expression changed slightly. Chu Li knew that he had guessed correctly. He shook his head and smiled. Why bother? If it were me, I would run for my life right now. You should be the one running for your life. Song Jifan sneered. Your protective technique won't last long, right? Can you hold on for an hour? Chu Li asked. Your heaven-killing technique can last for an hour. Song Jifan sneered. Chu Li grinned. Bam, 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 bam. The purple gold palm clashed with the sword of light, and soon, the entire restaurant collapsed. The two of them fought from the restaurant to the void, and everyone in the small city raised their heads to look, dumbfounded. Chu Li shook his head as he fought. Cult Leader Song, it's impossible for you to rule the world. Now that the Celestials have descended and the ancient sects have risen, it's not just the Changshan school. From what I know, there are many other sects that were better than the Changshan school in ancient times, like the Golden Sun school and the Splitting Mountain sect. So what if they come back? How can they have the strength of the Changshan school? Song Jifan said in disdain. Chu Li smiled. The Changshan school is hiding its strength and biding its time. The other ancient sects are the same, they might not be weaker than the Changshan school. Like the demonic blade sect, can you handle them? The demonic blade sect is just an unknown small sect, it's not worth mentioning. Song Jifan curled his lip. Chu Li shook his head. The demonic blade sect is unknown, but Meng Xiaoqi is not to be underestimated. You can't take him down, Cult Leader Song. I didn't really kill him, Song Jifan said. Chu Li laughed out loud and shook his head. The masters of the church were slaughtered, but Cult Leader Song, you still didn't kill him. If the followers heard this, wouldn't they be disappointed and rebel against you? Humph. Song Jifan knew that he said the wrong thing and exaggerated. He had actually given his all, but he still couldn't do anything to Meng Xiaoqi, and it ended in a draw. Isn't it inappropriate for the two of you to speak ill of me behind my back? Suddenly, a clear voice was heard. A person stepped out of the void and stood quietly in the air, looking down at the two. He held a black blade in his hand and revealed his face. It was Meng Xiaoqi. Chu Li smiled. Commander Meng, I'm impressed that you dared to show your face. Aren't you afraid of the Changshan School's revenge? The Changshan School is not the Changshan School of the past. Meng Xiaoqi sneered. If it was Song Wuji in the past, I would be afraid of him. Now, he's just a kid who hasn't even grown his hair yet. What's there to be afraid of? You're courting death, Song Jifan shouted. He left Chu Li and charged at Meng Xiaoqi. Meng Xiaoqi swung his blade. A black light flashed and appeared at Chu Li's neck in the next moment. Chu Li raised his purplish gold left palm and lightly hit the black blade. Bang! The black blade was swung away. Meng Xiaoqi swung his blade again and disappeared again. The next moment, he appeared behind Chu Li and the black blade was already at the back of his neck. Song Jifan swung his sword and attacked Chu Li together with Meng Xiaoqi. Although the two of them held grudges against each other, they wanted to defeat Chu Li at the same time. Song Jifan wanted to restrain Chu Li and even cripple him. Then, he would force him to hand over the Heaven-Killing Sword or use him to exchange the Heaven-Killing Sword with Goddess Attraction Mountain. He believed that the Mountain Master of Goddess Attraction Mountain would do the exchange. Meng Xiaoqi, on the other hand, simply wanted to kill Chu Li and make a name for himself. Then, he would make the Demonic Blade sect accept disciples. The two of them had different goals, but they both wanted to deal with Chu Li first. Chu Li faced the Dragon Fang sword with his left palm and the demonic blade with his right. He was calm and composed. He smiled as he parried. Since when did the Demonic Blade sect and the Changshan School join forces? Commander Song, I really admire your breadth of mind. You're able to endure the humiliation and join forces with the murderer of your own brothers. You're really thinking of the bigger picture. I'm impressed. Song Jifan gritted his teeth. The sarcasm in Chu Li's words was so strong that anyone could hear it. Moreover, his loud voice reverberated in the sky. Everyone in the town could hear it. Once this spread to the ears of the brothers in the church, his prestige would be greatly damaged. When he thought of this, his murderous intent boiled. He glanced at the people below him. It would not take much effort to get rid of these people in one fell swoop. A few angry roars would be enough to kill them. When he thought of this, he shouted, "Shut up! Nonsense! This is pure slander!" His voice was activated by the power of heavenly thunder. It was like a sudden clap of thunder exploding in everyone's ears. Their blood trembled and their heartbeats accelerated. Chu Li let out a long laugh and shook his head. Is Commander Song going to silence us? His voice was as warm as the spring breeze, gently caressing everyone. Their minds instantly cleared up. It was as if they were bathed in warm water. They felt indescribably comfortable, and the discomfort they felt disappeared. Song Jifan raised his eyebrows. He saw Chu Li's weakness, soft-heartedness. He was overjoyed and shouted, "Surnamed Chu, you'll definitely die today." His shout was once again activated by the power of an enlightened master. Chu Li scoffed. "It seems like you're deliberately going to commit an endless massacre." His voice was warm. Once again, it soothed everyone's pain and healed their bodies. He frowned to himself. Song Jifan was indeed a cultivator of the ageless longevity technique. He was cruel and merciless. He regarded human lives as worthless. He wanted to kill everyone in the town just because of a few words. Chapter 1731. He sneered and snorted before Song Jifan could. "Cult Master Song, if you kill them, then I'll kill all the disciples of your floating mountain." I want to see if you can kill more people, or if I can kill more people. If you kill my floating mountain's disciples, I will kill the High Duke's public house. Song Jifan scoffed. Chu Li said coldly, then you must have the ability to do so. Song Jifan said in disdain, say that after you can step on the floating mountain. What's so difficult about the floating mountain? Chu Li said, do you really think I can't enter the floating mountain? Of course. Song Jifan scoffed. No one can break into the floating mountain. Chu Li said, all right then, I'll break through it and show you. As he finished, he suddenly flashed. Meng Xiaoqi reacted at this time and shouted, he was tricked. He must have taken the opportunity to escape. Song Jifan glanced at him in disdain and suddenly disappeared. He was not in a hurry to kill the people in the small town. He could kill them later since they could not escape anyway. If Chu Li really escaped, it would be a big deal. Meng Xiaoqi was annoyed by Song Jifan's disdainful look, but he knew that it was not the time to fight. It was better to take care of Chu Li first. Killing Song Jifan was strenuous and unrewarding. Moreover, he was worried about Song Wuji. Meng Xiaoqi suddenly disappeared. Both of them appeared at the peak of the floating mountain and saw Chu Li standing in front of them, smiling at the two of them. You know this place? Song Jifan's face was gloomy. This was not good. This was the entrance of the floating mountain. If Chu Li knew this place, it would be easy to kill the floating mountain's disciples. He just had to ambush them here. He shuddered at the thought of this. Chu Li sneered, Leader Song, what do you think? You dare to kill my longevity faction's disciples? Song Jifan scoffed. You killed one of my longevity faction's disciples and I will kill 10 of your public house's protectors. Chu Li said, alright then, let's see who can kill who. Will your longevity faction's disciples or my public house's disciples die first? Meng Xiaoqi stood in the void and was not in a hurry to make a move. If the two of them were to fight first, it would not be too late for him to make a move. If he did not join forces with Song Jifan, he would not be able to kill Chu Li. Song Jifan snorted. Our floating mountain disciples rarely go down the mountain. How many can you kill? Break into the floating mountain if you dare. Chu Li said, this is the entrance. I also know the exit. Is it over there? As he spoke, he pointed at the mountain peak opposite him. Across this mountain, the next mountain is the exit of the floating mountain. Am I right, Cult Master Song? Song Jifan's sword-like eyebrows furrowed, and his face darkened even more. Chu Li continued, the disciples of your floating mountain rarely go down the mountain, and rarely go up the mountain. Alright, then let's see how many of you can come out. I'll just kill them all. Alright, you win. Song Jifan humphed. I will spare their lives. Chu Li scoffed. Do you really think that the floating mountain is invulnerable and impregnable? Of course. Song Jifan said proudly. The floating mountain is a masterpiece of heaven and earth. No one can break it. Chu Li pursed his lips. Where's the Great One Palace's formation destruction talisman? Have you ever seen a formation breaking talisman? They can't break the floating mountain's formation. Song Jifan curled his lip. Chu Li said, that might not be the case. He took out 3 jade pendants and tossed them into the air. The 3 jade pendants turned into 3 rays of light and spread out, then collided in the air. Then, a towering mountain appeared 200 meters high, floating there steadily and motionless, covering the sky. This formation was amazing. It clearly blocked the sun, but standing there, the sun still shone on. Only at this time, when the floating mountain appeared, did it block the sun again, making it impossible to see the sun. This was obviously caused by the floating mountain's formation, making it impossible for people to sense the existence of the floating mountain. How is it? Chu Li turned to look at Song Jifan. I only used 3 formation destruction talismans, and no one knows how many formation talismans the Great One Palace has. If they are determined to smash it, do you think they can break the floating mountain? No. Song Jifan gritted his teeth. He wanted to kill the Great One Palace. It seemed like it was better to destroy them. The floating mountain could not appear in front of the world. Once it lost its mysteriousness, there would be less fear of the floating mountain, and it would be much more difficult to unify the martial arts world in the future. Chu Li smiled. I don't think it's impossible. No matter how strong the floating mountain is, it's still powered by a formation. With enough formation destruction talismans, once the formation is broken, I'm afraid everyone on the floating mountain will die. Sigh, even the hardest shield can be broken, not to mention it's just a formation. There's no formation in the world that can't be broken. Shut up. Song Jifan sneered. You have a grudge against the Great One Palace, don't you? Chu Li smiled. That's right. Chu Li, you're really despicable and shameless. Song Jifan glared at him coldly. The floating mountain doesn't welcome you. Get lost now. Chu Li fist saluted and smiled. Then I'll be leaving. He looked at Meng Xiaoqi. Commander Meng, how many more moves do you want to exchange? Have a safe trip. Meng Xiaoqi said coldly. Chu Li shook his head. Commander Meng, although you're a celestial being, the commander of the Secret Guardians Hall isn't a good position. Even if you're from the imperial family, you should be careful of the Emperor's tricks. Our Emperor isn't one who cares about human relations. Just look at how he dealt with King An's imperial residence. Don't worry. Meng Xiaoqi's expression changed. Chu Li's words hit his heart. Recently, he had also noticed Leng Wufeng's change. Instead of respecting him because he was a senior, Leng Wufeng gradually became rude and bossy, and he did not treat him as a senior anymore. If this went on, he would really become Leng Wufeng's servant and official, and he would really become the commander of the Secret Guardians Hall. Previously, he became the commander of the Secret Guardians Hall because he wanted to know about the general situation of the world and the details. After all, he had always been in the Outland and did not understand this world. Since he had just arrived, he needed enough information to support him so that he could find geniuses and search for the demonic blade sect. He did not really want to do anything for Leng Wufeng. However, based on the current situation, Leng Wufeng seemed to want to make him the commander and serve him wholeheartedly. Chu Li chuckled and fist saluted before he disappeared. Sometimes, the power of words was no weaker than martial arts. The key was to hit the heart, and psychological attacks were better than martial arts. In a flash, Chu Li returned to the backyard of King An's imperial residence. TSS. A dazzling sword light shrouded him. The sound of the sword cutting through the air was extremely fast. Chu Li smiled and flicked his finger. Ding! The sword light that filled the sky dissipated and the long sword flew out of his hand. This Philip Swift thunder was so powerful that Xiao Shi's body froze and she could not hold on to her sword. Chu Li waved his hand and the long sword that was tumbling in the sky suddenly returned to his hand. He returned it to Xiao Shi with a smile. The numbness in Xiao Shi's body had subsided. She rolled her eyes at him and took the long sword. What do you think of my sword technique? Chu Li smiled. Not bad. Xiao Qi smiled and shook her head. Second eldest sister, don't believe me. Your sword technique is too weak. I think it's already very powerful, Xiao Shi said unhappily. Hui Qing sat proudly in the middle and sized Chu Li up. She scoffed and looked at Xiao Qi with dissatisfaction. Xiao Qi smiled. Where did he go? Chapter 1732. What happened? Xiao Qi hurriedly asked. Chu Li let out a sigh and told him everything that had happened. Although Hui Qing was a celestial being, she was not a threat. She was arrogant and only wanted to pursue the Great Way and live as long as the heavens. She was satisfied after finding a successor like Xiao Qi. Although she did not like Chu Li, she did not want to kill him. After listening, the three of them looked at him in shock. Xiao Shi said, Chu Li, you're really lucky to be able to come back alive after encountering something like this. Chu Li nodded. I was really lucky, or I would have died. Fortunately, the two spirit tigers were trustworthy and didn't destroy your body, Shao Qi said softly. Don't go to 100,000 Hills next time. Chu Li said, I still have to go to 100,000 Hills. Hui Qing suddenly sneered and glanced at him in disdain. Chu Li smiled. What advice do you have, master? I dare not. Hui Qing said coldly. She turned her head away, obviously not wanting to talk to him. Chu Li said, Master, you know about 100,000 Hills, right? Are you going there too? No. Hui Qing said. Chu Li smiled. I think the spirit tigers are too strong, and even celestial beings are no match for them. Master, you'll die if you go there. Hui Qing did not deny it. Chu Li knew he guessed correctly and frowned. Is there nothing in the world that can restrain supreme spirit beasts? Even in Outland, supreme spirit beasts can suppress celestial beings? Humph. Hui Qing scoffed and did not say anything. Chu Li said thoughtfully, If that's the case, supreme spirit beasts are beyond the world and no one can suppress them? He then said, No, if that's the case, the spirit beasts won't enter 100,000 Hills. There must be someone more powerful controlling the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, moving it and gathering it in 100,000 Hills. That's why the spirit beasts move there. You're not stupid after all. Hui Qing scoffed. Chu Li smiled. If that's the case, there's someone more powerful than celestial beings? Will enlightened masters become more powerful and rule over celestial beings after entering Outland? That sounds reasonable. Hui Qing said, Grandmasters who enter Outland can live longer and enjoy a wonderful world that this world doesn't have, but their status won't be as high. Chu Li nodded. Where's the enlightened master? Once an enlightened master ascends to the realm beyond heaven, his status will be higher than an ordinary celestial, right? Exactly. Hui Qing scoffed. When an enlightened deity enters the Outland, he will be more powerful than an ordinary celestial being. Once he cultivates to the extreme, he can step into the great deity realm. A great deity realm deity can fight against a supreme grade spirit beast. If that's the case, no one in this world is able to control the supreme rank spirit beasts. Chu Li frowned. Hui Qing nodded slowly. That's right, so don't even think about taking revenge. Just admit your defeat and stay away from the 100,000 mountains. Supreme spirit beasts aren't so easily deceived. Thank you for telling me. Chu Li gave a fist salute. Hui Qing scoffed. What's the point of me saying all this? You're still going to die. She had seen through Chu Li's temperament. Even if it was dangerous and his life was at stake, he still wanted to go to the 100,000 Hills. He faced the difficulties head-on and did not succumb to the might of the spirit tiger. This was also the source of his current achievement. Sigh. Chu Li shook his head and said, No one can control it. Do you know the heaven-killing incantation? Song Wuji's heaven-killing incantation? Hui Qing frowned. You've cultivated it? Chu Li shook his head. Hui Qing scoffed and said, If it's the heaven-killing incantation, well, you can give it a try, provided that you have the heaven-killing sword. Without the heaven-killing sword, the heaven-killing incantation is useless no matter how powerful it is. Only by complementing each other can you unleash a power that surpasses that of an enlightened master. Chu Li asked, Can I kill the spirit tiger? You want to kill the spirit tiger? Hui Qing frowned and looked at Chu Li. Chu Li nodded slowly. Hui Qing said, If you kill the spirit tiger, you'll suffer the revenge of all the supreme spirit beasts. Not only you, but Shao Qi and the others will also suffer the revenge. None of them will survive, including me. Chu Li's expression darkened. Hui Qing said, Supreme spirit beasts are famous for being overbearing. They won't care why you kill the spirit tiger. As long as you kill the spirit tiger, anyone who has anything to do with you will die. They'll all be killed. Even the entire Ji dynasty might be destroyed. Really? Xiao Shi was shocked. Destroy the Ji dynasty? Hui Qing scoffed. Chu Li is a Ji dynasty citizen. What about Goddess Attraction Mountain? Chu Li frowned. It's protected by the Golden Dragon, so it might still be there. Hui Qing nodded. That'll depend on the Golden Dragon. If the Golden Dragon wants to protect it, the other supreme spirit beasts will spare it out of respect. Otherwise they'll be killed. That's too much. Xiao Shi scoffed. Supreme spirit beasts are too much. Hui Qing scoffed coldly. Those below the great enlightened master can't provoke supreme spirit beasts. Let me give you a piece of advice. Even if you can kill them, don't kill them. Understood. Chu Li nodded slowly. Hui Qing said, don't kill Song Wuji's descendants too. Could Song Wuji be the great enlightened master? Chu Li frowned. Hui Qing shook her head. Not yet, but there's hope. All right. Chu Li sighed and said helplessly, I can't kill this and that. It seems like even becoming an enlightened master is still very frustrating. This world is really, suddenly, he felt a surge of frustration in his chest. He wanted to howl at the sky and break all restraints so that he could be free and unrestrained. Hui Qing scoffed. I thought you were a smart person, but now I know how naive you are. You think becoming an enlightened master will give you freedom? There's no such thing as freedom in this world. Only by cultivating the great path can you be free. Chu Li looked at Hui Qing and nodded helplessly. You're right, master. Hui Qing said, Xiao Qi doesn't understand this. She's obsessed with love and can't wholeheartedly pursue the great path. Chu Li was stunned. He then smiled. Master, are you asking my wife to abandon me to pursue the great path? That's right. Hui Qing nodded. If you can achieve the great path, you'll naturally become a cultivation partner. If you can't, instead of separating in the future, it's better to separate now. Chu Li shook his head. Master, you're wrong. Everyone will die eventually. Instead of dying in the future, it's better to die now. Humph. Hui Qing glanced at him in disdain and shook her head. She looked like a rotten tree that could not be carved. Xiao Qi pursed her lips and chuckled. Master, you don't have to persuade me anymore. The path of cultivation should be done step by step. Letting nature take its course is the great path. Follow the flow to become a mortal, follow the flow to become an immortal. The great path isn't something that follows the flow. Hui Qing waved her hand. Forget it, I can't convince you. You'll have to figure everything out yourself. I'll go rest now. As soon as she finished speaking, she lightly floated away. Chu Li let out a sigh of relief. Xiao Qi pursed her lips and smiled. Don't worry. Chu Li grabbed her hand and shook his head. Madam, I'm going into isolated cultivation from today onward. I'm going to integrate what I've learned. All right, I'm going into isolated cultivation too. Xiao Qi smiled. Xiao Shi said, I have the same intention. Let's go to Goddess Attraction Mountain. It's the quietest there. Chu Li said. Xiao Qi nodded. Xiao Shi waved her hand. You guys go ahead. I'm fine here. Xiao Qi was annoyed. Second sister, Xiao Shi said, why would I go and stir up trouble? Besides, you guys are an eyesore. We'll be isolated on our own. We won't be together. Chu Li smiled. Xiao Shi hesitated and nodded. All right then, I'll leave after I give you some instructions. Chapter 1733. When the three of them arrived at Goddess Attraction Mountain, Dong Jianxin was in isolated cultivation. Apart from the maids, there was no one else on this level. Master Zhou Dunley was also in isolated cultivation at the Outland, so something big must have happened. Unfortunately, the Devis they met were tight-lipped and dared not reveal anything. Even if they asked Master, they would not dare to say much, so they could only speculate on their own. Chu Li found a room for the two ladies. The spiritual energy here was rich, only slightly inferior to 100,000 Hills. He dared not send the two ladies to 100,000 hills for fear that the spirit tiger would find them. He dared not go there until he had cultivated the heaven-cursing technique. Previously, he managed to escape by committing suicide, but he would not be so lucky the next time. The spirit tiger was more intelligent, so it would definitely be angry at being deceived by insignificant humans. Its killing intent would be stronger, and it would definitely die. Chu Li's courtyard was used by Shao Qi, so he went to another courtyard and found a cattail hassock to sit down. His heart sank as he entered the spirit beast bracelet and connected with the flare-devouring turtle. The spirit beast bracelet was truly mysterious. Through telepathy they could share memories and experiences. Through the flare-devouring turtle's experience, Chu Li could see everything it had experienced in its mind. The flare-devouring turtle lay motionlessly on the jade statue in the basilica. It had a quiet nature, so it could stay motionless for up to 100 years. Now that it was bathed in the warm aura, it was intoxicated by the feeling, so it could lie there for a longer time. Chu Li then saw the cultivation method of Black Tortoise Mountain through its eyes. The basilica's door was slowly pushed open, and sunlight shone in. 6 elders and 4 young men entered the basilica quietly and sat on the cattail hassock. The 10 hassocks surrounded the jade statue. After they sat down, they reached out their right hands and gently pressed on the jade statue to channel their own energy into it. Instantly, the jade statue emitted a warm luster as if a clear spring was flowing within it. They channeled the black tortoise power and channeled their energy into the jade statue. In turn, the jade statue fed them energy, which was the same as the flare-devouring turtles. When Chu Li saw this, he understood that the jade statue was unusually mysterious. It absorbed everyone's energy and stored it in its body, as well as the flare-devouring turtle's energy. This way, even if the flare-devouring turtle was not around, it could still help the people cultivate. Even if the people were not around, it could still help the flare-devouring turtle. It was able to ensure continuous cultivation and could even cultivate for a long time. It was no wonder that the Black Tortoise Mountain had always been so powerful. It was all because of this jade statue. This time, they had used a secret technique to summon the origin-devouring tortoise. Originally, it could only guarantee 1 person to cultivate, but now it had increased to 10. The longer the origin-devouring tortoise stayed, the more powerful the Black Tortoise Mountain would become. Through the flare-devouring turtle's mind, Chu Li saw the Black Tortoise power from the 1st level to the 10th level. This Black Tortoise power actually had 1 more level than the Dragon Taming Technique and 2 less levels than the Tiger Taming Technique. Chu Li could already conclude that the Dragon Taming Technique and the Black Tortoise power were incomplete. The only complete technique was the Tiger Taming Technique. With the art of Imperial Tiger, the Black Tortoise power, and the art of Imperial Dragon, he had a general understanding of the mental cultivation method of spiritual beasts. The Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Black Tortoise, and Vermilion Bird belonged to 4 different directions. Their inner energies were completely different in nature, but they worked together to form the most stable existence, just like a formation. Chu Li had a deep understanding of formations. The 4 symbols formation was not too exquisite, but with the omniscient mirror's meticulous observation of his body, he could see things that others could not. His understanding of the circulation of his body and the mental cultivation method was also far beyond the reach of ordinary people. Adding all these together, he quickly cultivated the Black Tortoise power. Unfortunately, the Black Tortoise power was not perfected, so it could not reach the level of the Tiger Taming Technique. Even so, his cultivation level had increased by 2 times, and his skin and flesh had become tougher. Although the indestructible body of titanium did not have another breakthrough, its power had increased greatly, and it was more than easy for him to defend against the Vermilion Bird's fire and the Spirit Tiger's spiritual energy. After cultivating the 3 spiritual beast techniques, he began to comprehend the ageless longevity technique. The ageless longevity technique was mysterious and overbearing, but it was also mysterious and unusual. As long as one's lifespan remained, one would almost never die. Moreover, one's lifespan could also be increased through devouring, which was far beyond imagination. It was common knowledge that lifespan was determined by heaven. Even if one had a strong body and cultivated to the Grandmaster's boundary, their lifespan would be greatly increased. However, their lifespan was fixed, and the cultivation level determined the limit of their lifespan. However, with the ageless longevity technique, as long as one continued to devour, one would almost never die, truly achieving the effect of immortality. The name of this technique was not an exaggeration. With Song Jifan's cultivation level, it was not difficult for him to not die. Since it was so mysterious, it was naturally difficult to cultivate. The biggest obstacle was the 6th level, which was the understanding of life and death. If one could not understand the secret of life and death, and could not find the state of mind that was like life and death, it would be difficult to improve. Song Jifan and Elder Fong had both passed through the 6th level and cultivated to the highest level, so they could not die and stay young forever. Chu Li concluded that the ageless longevity technique must have other methods of inheritance, or else it would be very difficult to understand. Although he had been taught the ageless longevity technique, he did not inherit it. Without the cultivation experience of the inheritance, it was almost impossible to cultivate it successfully. However, he had the life and death scripture and the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture, so he had the most understanding of life and death. Therefore, his cultivation of the ageless longevity technique progressed by leaps and bounds. In just half a month, he had perfected it, not losing to Song Jifan. The 3 spirit beast heart techniques were almost perfected. Although the dragon taming technique and black tortoise power were incomplete, they had also reached the peak. As for the vermilion bird power, he tried to derive it, but in the end, he did not dare to act recklessly. If there was one level of the vermilion bird power, he could use the opportunity to derive the other levels, but he had no confidence in deriving it out of thin air, so he decided to wait and see if he could obtain the vermilion bird power. He was originally prepared to leave, but then an idea came to him. He suddenly activated the tiger taming technique and intersected the force of the tiger taming technique with the spiritual energy of the spirit tiger. When the 2 forces collided, it was like fire and oil meeting. With a bang, an even more powerful spiritual energy was formed. Chu Li was secretly shocked. Such a powerful force, even his indestructible body of diamond could not withstand it. However, to his surprise, this spiritual energy that was 3 to 4 times stronger did not attack his body. Instead, there was a sense of connection, as if this powerful spiritual energy belonged to him. Chu Li was stunned, but then he was overjoyed. His idea had actually come true. He had a flash of inspiration. He suddenly thought that if he cultivated the tiger taming technique, the spirit tiger's force that was blocked by the indestructible body of diamond could be eliminated and resisted. He had seen the power of the dragon taming technique. After combining it with the green dragon, its power multiplied. Back then, he combined the green dragon to kill Tang Haotian. Since the dragon taming technique could connect with the force of the green dragon, then could the tiger taming technique connect with the spiritual energy of the spirit tiger? Moreover, his tiger taming technique was cultivated with the help of the spirit tiger, so it could be considered the same source. Just like that, he took the risk and tried. Through the tiger taming technique, he could actually connect with the force of the spirit tiger. In this way, it could be considered a blessing in disguise. If he attacked with the tiger taming technique, it was equivalent to joining hands with a spirit tiger. Although it was only the force of the spirit tiger, it could not be compared to a real spirit tiger. He estimated that this spiritual energy was enough for him to attack once. If the power of one attack could not defeat the enemy, then he could not use it again. He was also worried that once this spiritual energy was used, it would be immediately eliminated and could only be used once. Chapter 1734. At this point, he recalled the characteristics of the vermilion bird's fire and the spirit tiger's energy. They could devour all inner energy to strengthen themselves. Using this characteristic, he could make the spirit tiger's spiritual energy flow endlessly to help him. Although he could only attack once each time, it was enough to kill in a critical moment. He stood up and paced around with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the sky. The moonlight was like water, and Goddess Attraction Mountain was exceptionally quiet. Everything around him seemed to have stopped. After a while, he had a flash of inspiration and smiled. Standing where he was, a red beam of light shot up into the sky. The supreme diamond scripture circulated faster and faster, and the indestructible body of Vajra began to condense. It slowly shrunk from his defensive range to the two spiritual energies. Moreover, they surrounded each other, forming two spheres that enveloped the spiritual energies. With that, the two spiritual energies were completely imprisoned and could no longer cause harm. There was no need to constantly use the indestructible body of Vajra. He followed the idea he had and directed the spirit tiger's spiritual energy to the undersea chakra. In the undersea chakra, the supreme diamond scripture's inner energy surged like waves. The supreme diamond scripture's inner energy usually circulated in the 3 meridians and 7 chakras and had nothing to do with the other meridians. The supreme diamond scripture's inner energy drilled into the sphere formed by the indestructible body of Vajra. The supreme diamond scripture's inner energy activated the indestructible body of Vajra, so it easily entered the sphere and merged with the spirit tiger's spiritual energy. Boom! It was like pouring oil on a fire. The spirit tiger's spiritual energy suddenly grew to twice its original size. The supreme diamond scripture's inner energy was unusually pure and was extremely effective in strengthening it. In the blink of an eye, it grew to twice its original size. Chuli was overjoyed. With this, he did not have to worry about the spirit tiger's spiritual energy dissipating. As long as there was a lack of spiritual energy, he could immediately use the supreme diamond scripture to add more. He wanted to laugh out loud. With the help of the spirit tiger's spiritual energy, his strength increased again. Even if he faced a celestial or even Song Jifan, he would be able to crush them. Thinking about this, he wanted to find Song Jifan immediately. Before this, he was the one who provoked him. This time, it was his turn. If he could obtain the heaven-murdering script, he could enter the 100,000 hills again. He calmed himself down and placed the vermilion bird's fire into his heart chakra. Using the omniscient mirror, Chuli saw that Shao Qi and Shao Shi were both concentrating on channeling their energy. They were in a good state, so it was best not to disturb them. He pondered for a while before he wrote a letter to Shao Qi. Then, he suddenly disappeared and reappeared in his own courtyard in the public house. Xue Ling could sense his presence the moment he appeared. She was dressed in a loose nightgown with her hair hanging loosely over her shoulders. She appeared in front of him. "Master, if you don't come back soon, Chongming Town will be in chaos." The omniscient mirror scanned the surroundings and saw the situation in Chongming Town. He frowned and snorted. "That's quite a lot." He saw 10 celestial men in Chongming Town. They were shrouded in a hazy white light like a white veil. It blocked the omniscient mirror's observation, but it also revealed their identities. They were all celestial men. "Are they causing a ruckus?" Chuli scoffed. Xue nodded lightly. "They have injured more than 10 of our protectors. We can't suppress them. Master Xiao is already injured." Chuli sneered. "You really know how to pick the right time." "I didn't dare to disturb Master Xiao's isolated cultivation. I told them that 10 days later, Master Xiao will settle the score with them." Xue Ling said. "They managed to drag it out. Tomorrow is the last day. Chu Li smiled. Fortunately, I'm back now. How are the protectors? They were saved with the spirit blessing pill, Xueling said. Chu Li's face immediately darkened. They killed them? Yes. Xueling nodded lightly. She frowned slightly. They were not polite at all. It was obvious that they wanted to provoke you, Master Xiao. After that, Master Xiao didn't show up and thought that I was telling the truth. However, they caused a ruckus in Chongming Town and caused a foul atmosphere in the town. Our public house has lost its dignity. Chu Li's face darkened even more. It was as if he was made of stone, gloomy and hard. Xueling felt that the air had solidified. She could hardly breathe. Fortunately, she was a grandmaster and did not have to worry about suffocating. Chu Li scoffed. They dared to cause such a ruckus. Looks like they have nothing to fear. These celestial beings dared to cause such a ruckus because of their identities. They felt that Chu Li would not be able to kill them and that they were more powerful than enlightened masters. They felt that they could do whatever they wanted in this realm without fear. Other than them killing each other, the remaining enlightened masters and grandmasters were not worth mentioning. Xueling nodded. This is the first time such a situation has happened. They are so unscrupulous and merciless. Where's Master Xiao Taiying? Chu Li did not see Xiao Taiying. Xueling said, Master Xiao Taiying has gone to the other public houses to contact them. They want to work together to get rid of them. Chu Li said slowly, Go and send the message. I'll meet them tomorrow at noon at the Sky Inn. Yes, Xueling quickly said. She hesitated for a moment. Master Chu Li's gloomy face relaxed. He smiled. Why? Are you afraid that I can't defeat them? Yes. Xueling said softly. These people's cultivation level is very high. They are so unscrupulous. They must have something to rely on. Moreover, there are many of them. We have to be careful. Chu Li said, I've learned something from my isolated cultivation. Don't worry. Yes. Xueling let out a sigh of relief and retreated lightly. The moonlight fell on the Glory's Will Tree. It seemed to be absorbed by the tree. The Glory's Will Tree was exceptionally bright. At first glance, it looked like a silver tree. Chu Li looked at the Glory's Will Tree calmly. He chuckled. Could there be someone's shadow behind this? It was already late autumn. The noon sun was especially bright. It warmed one's face. Outside the Sky Inn was densely packed with people. They almost filled the streets and alleys. When Chu Li left the public house, both sides of the street were already filled with people. When they saw Chu Li, they immediately closed fist, saluted, and waved. They all greeted him. Chu Li closed fist, saluted, and smiled. He walked forward. His white robe fluttered in the wind. He was indescribably calm and at ease. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Chu Li walked to the third floor of the Sky Inn. The upper floor was already full of people. Everyone had received the news that the chief of the public house, Chu Li, was coming to the Sky Inn at noon. These martial arts masters who suddenly appeared in Chongming Town had high cultivation levels. They beat up the protectors of the public house. The High Duke's public house, which had always been majestic, had now become a weakling that was beaten to the point where they could not even fight back. This made the people of Chongming Town feel extremely disappointed. The sense of security and the arrogance they had towards the martial arts masters had disappeared in an instant. Even though the public house was beaten to a sorry state and protectors of the public house kept falling, the public house did not withdraw its protectors. There were always protectors walking on the street. When they were knocked down and died, another protector would immediately take their place. The people were touched and angry at these outsiders. All the people still had a glimmer of hope, because Chief Chu Li did not appear. Some people said that Chief Chu Li was afraid and did not dare to appear because he was not confident that he could defeat his opponent. This kind of rumor spread quickly in the town. Many people believed it because these outsiders were really too strong. Later, Xueling released the news that 10 days later, Chu Li would come out of isolation to settle the score with the people. Only then did the crazy spread of the rumor stop. The people's hope was greatly increased. This was because of Chu Li's prestige. Chapter 1735. Chu Li saw so many people and felt helpless. The people of Chongming Town lacked respect for martial art. They knew what kind of masters they were going to face, but they still came to watch. Battles of their level were often earth-shattering. Even an innate master would be in danger, not to mention many people who did not know martial arts. However, he could not say much now. Otherwise, the people would think that he was not confident. He was afraid that people would see him lose and it would be an excuse. He could only think of a way to end the battle quickly or lure them into the air. As he pondered, Chu Li sat on a window seat on the third floor. He looked at the enthusiastic and hopeful people around him and closed-fist saluted with a smile. Everyone, don't worry. Chongming Town is still Chongming Town. It will not change because of a few outsiders. Chief, can you take care of them? Someone asked. The people's eyes were burning as if they could melt him. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Anyone who dares to use violence in Chongming Town will be crippled of their martial arts. If it's serious, they will be killed. They killed our public house protectors. They deserve to die. Someone shouted. Chu Li shook his head. The public house protectors did not die. Didn't you notice that the protectors that everyone thought were dead appeared on the second or third day? Yes, I noticed it. Someone hurriedly shouted. In the end, Old Li didn't believe me. He said that I was mistaken, that my eyes were playing tricks on me and I recognized the wrong person. Chu Li smiled. The public house protectors will not die so easily. Even if they are injured, they still have a secret technique to save their lives. But these people killed people. We must not let them go. Yes. Chu Li slowly said. This time, I will scare those people with ulterior motives. I will let everyone know the rules of Chongming Town. No one can break this rule, not even an enlightened master. Good. The people cheered. This was also the pride of the people of Chongming Town. It was the safest to stay in Chongming Town. They did not have to worry about martial arts masters or people wanting to kill them. All the murders in Chongming Town were solved. In recent years, there was not a single murder case. Chu Li smiled. When the fight starts later, it's better for everyone to avoid being stained with blood. With Chief Chu here, we can rest assured. The people said. Chu Li smiled and closed-fist saluted. Thank you for your kindness. Hee, how impressive. Suddenly, a sneer drowned out the cheers of the crowd. A big man with a square face strode into the restaurant. He was dressed in a coarse gray robe. He had a lion's nose and leopard's eyes, looking rough and bold. Chu Li glanced at him and gave a fist salute. May I know your name? Humph, your surname is Huang Jin. The square-faced man shouted in a deep voice, Iron Gut Mountain's Mountain Lord. Chu Li pondered for a moment and nodded. The ancient sect, the Iron Courage Mountain, is unparalleled in morality and justice. It is a rather reputable sect. I didn't expect the Iron Courage Mountain to come out of the mountain. As the leader of the mountain, he came to Chongming Town and behaved atrociously. He really does not deserve the name of the Iron Courage Mountain. He had seen the records of the Iron Courage Mountain in the cave of the 100,000 Great Mountains. It was one of the ancient sects that cultivated a pair of eyes. It was said that a look could kill, and it was impossible to guard against it. Huang Jin snorted and said, What **T rules, where is the dignity of us martial artists? I heard that you, Chu Li, are the most famous. You killed an enlightened master as a grandmaster, and you are also the emperor of the Fu dynasty. I'm here to learn a thing or two from you. Chu Li smiled. Since you're here for me, why bother the protectors of the public house when I'm not here? Who knows if you're a coward hiding in the public house and not daring to come out? Huang Jin said, That's why we gave it a try. What **T rules? I can't use force in Chongming Town, so I used force. What can you do about it? Chu Li sighed. Iron Courage Mountain, so this is what you're made of. You really live up to your name. Shut up. Huang Jin was furious. He pointed at Chu Li and shouted, How dare you insult the name of the Iron Courage Mountain? Chu Li shook his head and said, I did insult the name of the Iron Courage Mountain. What can you do about it? Chu Li, do you think that you're invincible just because you can defeat an enlightened master? Huang Jin took a deep breath and glanced at the crowd. His gaze was like lightning. Anyone who met his gaze would tremble in fear and want to run away. However, when they saw that the people around them did not leave, they could only suppress their impulses to avoid being laughed at. Chu Li said, Being able to defeat an enlightened master doesn't mean that I'm invincible. However, you Celestials aren't invincible either. Don't think that you can do whatever you want here. Huang Jin frowned and looked at him. Chu Li chuckled and took a sip of his wine. He shook his head. Do you think I don't know that you're a Celestial? How do you know? Huang Jin frowned. Chu Li said, Because you've shown your arrogance. Anyone who knows the inside story would be able to tell at a glance. Good. Huang Jin scoffed. I've underestimated you. Chu Li picked up the wine pot and filled his glass. He took another sip of wine and sighed. The world is so big. You Celestials think that you can do whatever you want. You don't respect the enlightened masters from other countries. You don't even respect the masters below the enlightened master. Other than the 100,000 hills, you can go wherever you want. You can do whatever you want. No one can control you. As long as you don't break the rules, you're free. That's right. Huang Jin scoffed. Chu Li took another sip of wine and sighed. Then I can only say that you're dreaming. I'll let you know the rules today. He held the wine glass in one hand and lightly slapped Huang Jin with his palm. Huang Jin could not help but laugh coldly. How dare you? Without a care in the world, Chu Li welcomed the attack with his palm. Although it seemed light, it contained a lot of internal energy. Chu Li wanted to kill Chu Li with a single palm strike and make the Iron Guts Mountain famous. Then, more people would join the Iron Guts Mountain and take in more disciples. Bang! With a loud explosion, the table in front of Chu Li turned into powder. Only the wine glass in his hand remained. He sat firmly on the ground. However, Huang Jin was like a stone thrown from a catapult. He broke through the roof and flew into the air. Chu Li's palm looked easy and did not use much strength. He did not use the Heavenly King palm or the Diamond palm. He used the tiger taming technique. The inner energy of the tiger taming technique and the spiritual energy of the spirit tiger were combined. The power of the palm was beyond imagination. Even though Huang Jin was a celestial, he was not a match for this palm. Moreover, he was sent flying without any resistance. Chu Li disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared in front of Huang Jin in the air. An electric light flashed on his waist. Huang Jin's head flew up and left his body. Blood gushed out like a fountain. It was especially eye-catching under the noon sun. Huang Jin's face was full of disbelief and unwillingness. His thoughts were still there, but he was powerless. He had not used his antique study, his celestial seal had not been broken, and he did not have the time to use all his skills. It was really frustrating to die like this. Ah! The people could not help but scream. They did not expect to see such a cruel scene. Chapter 1736. Everyone stared at him with their eyes wide open. Under the sunlight, he gently shook his long sword in the air and returned it to its scabbard. He stood in the void as if he was walking on flat ground and looked down at the crowd. His body was covered in a bright light, like a god descending to earth, imprinted in everyone's mind. Although Chu Li was not an enlightened master, he had learned the skills of an enlightened master and had a thorough understanding of the void. He had reached the state of being an integral part of heaven and man, so he could stand in the void without moving like an enlightened master. Huang Jin's head and body were like two feathers that slowly fell to the ground as if they were weightless. The crowd looked on in surprise. Although it was cruel and scary, the more they did not want to look, the more they stared. The body and head slowly became bright as if a layer of water light fell on his body. Gradually, the body and head became brighter and brighter until they became two balls of light that could not be looked at directly. It was so dazzling. However, the situation was too strange. The people knew that it was not appropriate and should close their eyes, but they stared at it with their eyes wide open, watching as it turned into two white lights and shot into the sky. The late autumn sky was especially blue as if it had been washed. A few white clouds floated slowly. At this time, a door of light slowly opened. It was a huge and majestic door of light. Even from far above the clouds, the crowd felt as if it was a prison. Their knees went weak and they wanted to kneel on the ground. Chu Li scoffed. "It really is a celestial." His shout resounded throughout the city. Everyone who was about to kneel heard this shout, like a big bell being rung. Their bodies suddenly trembled, and they were freed from the majestic prison and straightened their knees. They could not help but feel fear. They widened their eyes as they watched the door of light slowly open. Then, the two lights merged into one and entered the door of light. Then, the door of light slowly closed and gradually disappeared into the clouds. Chu Li stood in the void and looked down at the crowd. He raised his voice and said, "The other 9 celestial, are you not going to come out and greet me?" The crowd looked around, feeling excited. They did not expect Chu Li to get rid of one person so easily, and it was a celestial. Celestials only appeared in legends. In their impression, celestials were powerful and invincible. They lived for tens of thousands of years and were the most enviable existences. No matter how rich their imagination was, no matter how much confidence they had in Chu Li, when they saw these people treating the protectors of the High Duke's public house like adults beating up children, they did not dare to have too much hope. Moreover, Chu Li had not appeared for a long time, so they subconsciously thought that Chu Li was hiding and thinking of ways to deal with them. They never thought that they would see such a scene. They were trembling with excitement. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to witness the death of a celestial being. It was enough for them to brag to their sons and grandsons for the rest of their lives. Chongming Town had a rule that even a celestial being could not break. As the people of Chongming Town, they were all proud of it. "As a celestial being, you still want to hide?" Chu Li laughed loudly. "Could it be that you're afraid of me? Chu Li, you really live up to your reputation." A cold laugh rang out, and then 9 people appeared in the sky, surrounding Chu Li. These 9 people were different in shape and appearance. The only thing they had in common was that their bodies were slowly emitting brilliance, and the brilliance was getting brighter and brighter, overpowering the noon sun. People were shocked. There were 9 celestial beings, not just one. Looking at this posture, it was obvious that the 9 of them were going to join forces. "Hey, if you have the guts, come at me one by one. 9 against 1, what kind of man are you? What kind of celestial being are you? It's so embarrassing!" Someone shouted. The 9 people ignored him. They just surrounded Chu Li and slowly approached him. Chu Li glanced at the 9 people and shook his head. "Look at you, you don't have the appearance of a celestial being. Such courage, it's really embarrassing for a celestial being. I'm embarrassed for you. Don't try to be eloquent. Chu Li, you dare to kill a celestial being, how dare you?" An old man said slowly. His eyebrows were pale and his face was full of wrinkles. He did not look like a celestial being at all. However, at this time, as the brilliance around his body brightened, the wrinkles on his face gradually faded and finally disappeared. From an old face, he became a middle-aged man. This slight change was presented in front of everyone's eyes, and they were amazed by it. Chu Li smiled. "Why can't celestials be killed?" "Humph, mortals can't kill celestials. Only heavenly rules can." the old man said in a low voice. He had become a middle-aged man. His face was square and he looked stern. He said seriously, "Now that you've killed a celestial being, you've broken heavenly rules. Don't blame me for not reminding you." Chuli laughed. "So, when I face you celestials, I can only obediently accept my death? That's the biggest joke in the world." "That's right," he said slowly. "If that's the case, we'll send you to heaven. When you reach the Outland, you'll know the consequences." As soon as he finished speaking, the other 8 people who were glowing with brilliance attacked together. Bam 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 bam. Chuli was hit by the 9 people like a sandbag. It was as if he had become stupid. He did not know how to dodge and took all 9 hits. Huh! The 9 people's expressions changed. Chuli's expression did not change. His white robe fluttered as he smiled at the 9 people. He shook his head. "Is that all you've got?" After cultivating the black tortoise power, his indestructible body of titanium became stronger. The 9 people's palm energy could not break through the indestructible body of titanium. It was like scratching an itch. "You?" The middle-aged man frowned at him. Chuli shook his head. "Is that all you celestials are capable of? I'm really disappointed." "Good. Good," the middle-aged man said slowly. "You really have some tricks up your sleeves." Again, the other 8 people had a serious look on their faces. If they were in his shoes, they would not be able to do it. It was obvious that Chuli's cultivation level was higher than theirs. They had no choice but to use their ultimate study. If the 9 of them could not kill Chuli, they would become the laughingstock of the world. Instead of making a name for themselves, they would become a laughingstock. Who would be willing to become their disciple? How could they strengthen their faction? TSS. Chuli suddenly appeared behind the middle-aged man. The sword at his waist flashed. He used the tiger taming technique and the spirit tiger's spiritual energy to activate the heaven-slaughtering 3 forms. Coupled with his tyrannical strength, the speed of his sword was beyond imagination. Even if the middle-aged man was prepared, he could not avoid it in time. The head was separated from the body. Blood spurted out like a fountain. It was beautiful and scary under the noon sun. The people screamed in shock, but they became more excited. The head and body once again emitted rays of light, following which a door of light appeared in the sky and slowly opened. Once again, the crowd felt as if they were in a prison, but this time, they forcefully suppressed the urge to kneel. They stared at the 2 rays of light that merged into one and entered the door of light. The light door slowly closed and the world returned to peace. The people's eyes fell on the remaining 8 celestial beings. The 8 celestial beings' faces were pale as they stared at Chuli. Their gazes were like burning torches and their killing intent was like boiling water. They wanted to tear Chuli apart. The dignity of the celestial beings was shattered by him. From now on, the world would never respect the celestial beings like this. Chuli looked at the 8 people calmly and said, "Which one of you has killed a protector of the High Duke's public house?" "We have." The 8 sneered. Chuli nodded. "Then, everyone, return to heaven." He disappeared after saying that and appeared next to another celestial being. The 8 of them immediately attacked him. The power of the celestial beings was beyond imagination. They seemed to be far away from him, but in the next moment, they were close. Chapter 1737. He used the spirit tiger's spiritual energy and the tiger taming technique's inner energy to activate the heaven-killing 3 forms, which had the effect of sealing the space. Therefore, the devas who could travel through the void could not dodge Chuli's sword light. They could only watch as the sword light cut off their heads and returned to the Outland. Swoosh! Another pillar of blood rose and a severed head appeared. The expression on the severed head was filled with unwillingness and anger. Chuli shook his long sword lightly and faced the remaining 7 people. He shook his head and sighed. Those who killed the protectors of the public house will be killed without mercy. Go back to the outland and reflect. This is not a place for you to behave atrociously. He flashed again and killed another Devis. The remaining 6 suddenly merged into the void and disappeared. Chuli stood in the void and looked at the empty surroundings. He shook his head. The Devis are only SOSO. Everyone disperse. Chief Chu! Chief Chu! Everyone cheered and shouted with all their might. Chief Chu's voice became louder and louder. It was like a huge wave that rose and fell in Chongming town. He killed the Devis in the void, and everyone in the town could see it clearly. Everyone was subdued by his divine might, and they prostrated themselves in admiration. They shouted at the top of their lungs to vent their admiration and excitement. Chuli smiled and nodded at the crowd. Everyone, go. I still have to go after those people. He sheathed his sword and gave a fist salute to the crowd. He then slowly merged into the void. Chief Chu! Chief Chu! The people shouted at the empty sky. Their faces were distorted and they were extremely excited. They did not want to leave for a long time. Chuli appeared next to a Devis in the next moment. He swung his long sword and the Devis head flew up. Then, the body and the head turned into light and shot into the sky, entering the light door. He was intoxicated by this feeling. He did not expect that after taming the spirit tiger's spiritual energy, he would reach such a realm. It was equivalent to a small supreme spirit beast. He was 1 level higher than the Devis, so he could suppress and win. In this way, who in the world could be his opponent? He could not help but smile when he thought about this. However, he was not arrogant nor did he laugh at the sky. This was because there were supreme spirit beasts. His spiritual energy was not worth mentioning in front of a true supreme spirit beast. Without the sky murdering art, he would not dare to face the spirit tiger. Just as he was about to disappear, a person in a bright yellow dragon robe appeared in front of him. It was Ling Wufeng. Ling Wufeng cupped his hands and smiled. Head Chief Chu. Chuli frowned. Why is His Majesty here? Previously in Chongming town, Your Majesty turned a deaf ear to us. Why are you here now? Ling Wufeng sighed and shook his head. You've wronged me, head majordomo. There's nothing I can do about celestials, so I can only turn a blind eye to them. After all, they're celestials. Chuli replied, as an enlightened master, don't you dare to control these celestial beings and allow them to act as they please. Ling Wufeng shook his head. I want to interfere, but I have to be wary of the people behind them. They're all big shots that we can't afford to offend, so it's unwise for you to act like this, head chief. Chuli scoffed. So His Majesty is here to stop me from killing them. I have good intentions. Ling Wufeng shook his head. I wish I could kill all of them, but I can't bear to do that when I think about the consequences that you'll face. What consequences? Chuli asked. Will celestials descend to kill me? Ling Wufeng replied slowly, It's not impossible. Chuli could not help but laugh. I'd like to see it for myself. Head chief, you've killed a few celestials. Do you think that all celestials are like this? Ling Wufeng said solemnly, These are only the lowest level of celestials. They're the lowest existence in the Grandmaster's boundary. Chuli asked, Are there more powerful celestials in the Ji dynasty? Of course. Ling Wufeng replied, The level of celestials is similar to our world. The celestials that you've killed are just low-level ones, so don't be arrogant. If you really anger the people behind them, not only you, but I'll be in trouble too. Chuli could not help but laugh. So this is Your Majesty's real intention. You're afraid that you'll be implicated. Sigh. You've already killed half of them. It's enough for you to establish your authority. No one will dare to offend Chongming town anymore. Ling Wufeng advised earnestly, Why must you kill them all and anger the big shots? Chuli replied, The rules of Chongming town can't be broken. They must die. If that's the case, you're determined to kill them? Ling Wufeng's face darkened. Chu Li nodded. I'll kill whoever's in my way. Your Majesty, please step aside. What if I don't? Ling Wufeng scoffed. Chu Li smiled. Your Majesty should know. How dare you? Ling Wufeng shouted and his face darkened. Don't forget, Chu Li, you're still my subject. Chu Li could not help but laugh. Your Majesty, are you getting old and forgetful? Don't you know that I'm a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain and no longer your subject? You're forgetting your roots. Ling Wufeng said darkly. Don't forget that you're from the Temple of Autumn. The smile on Chu Li's face froze and his gaze turned cold. Your Majesty, are you threatening me with the Temple of Autumn? That's right. Ling Wufeng said. If you act presumptuously, don't blame me for being heartless. The Temple of Autumn isn't as powerful as you are. He knew Chu Li's weakness, which was friendship. While the High Duke's public house was his weakness, his bigger weakness was the Temple of Autumn. Only a few people knew that he was from the Temple of Autumn. As he became famous, almost no one knew where he was from, as the High Duke's public house consciously blocked it. Nonetheless, this could not be hidden from the Emperor, who knew the Temple of Autumn very well. The Temple of Autumn was Chu Li's real weakness. Seeing that martial arts could not restrain him, he wanted to test the Temple of Autumn. Chu Li sighed. Looks like I've been too polite to your Majesty. He disappeared in a flash and appeared behind Ling Wufeng in the next second. The long sword at his waist flashed. Ding! Ling Wufeng blocked it with his sword. Ling Wufeng's sword swung and the crouching Tiger Divine sword continued to move forward, cutting off one of Ling Wufeng's fingers. The long sword almost fell to the ground. You! Ling Wufeng retreated in shock and disappeared in the next second. Chu Li sneered and was about to chase after him when he heard a Buddhist chant. Amitabha! Chu Li stopped and stared at the tall monk who slowly appeared behind him. The monk's eyebrows were white, but his eyes were clear. He sighed. Great Master, are you going to help him again? Amitabha! Liao Ming bowed with pressed palms and said slowly, I can't kill him, I can't kill him. Why can't I kill him? Chu Li said impatiently. Such an incompetent and muddle-headed fellow doesn't deserve to be the emperor. If he dies, we can just replace him. Even King Jing is better than him. Sigh. Liao Ming shook his head and sighed. Almsgiver Chu, you don't have to say such things out of anger. If you really kill His Majesty, the Ji dynasty will be in chaos. It'll be a disaster for all living beings. Chu Li scoffed. If there's a next time, I won't forgive him. Great Master, remind him that it's best not to let him see me. Chapter 1738. Chu Li smiled. You still need my help, tell me about it. He was not in a hurry to agree. He had a deep friendship with Fa Yuan and they helped each other. However, he was wary of Liao Ming and could not promise anything. Liao Ming said calmly, I'm preparing to ascend to heaven in advance. Chu Li was shocked. It's not the time yet, right? Under normal circumstances, I would have to wait for another 2 years. Liao Ming nodded calmly. But the situation is pressing. If I don't leave now, I'm afraid. He shook his head as he spoke. Chu Li immediately understood what he meant. Fa Yuan's martial arts skills improved rapidly, but it could not stop the rise of geniuses. After the Deva descended, there would definitely be more geniuses cultivated and unearthed. Originally, Fa Yuan needed to wait 2 years before taking over the position. Now, it seemed like there would be someone more powerful in 2 years. Just like himself, he went from a scribe without any martial arts to a top-notch master in less than 2 years. There might be a second Chu Li. To be safe, it was better to let Fa Yuan take over as soon as possible. What do you want me to do, Master? Chu Li asked. Liao Ming said, Now that the world is in chaos, I won't have peace even if I want to ascend to heaven. There will be people coming to cause trouble, even Deva will come to disturb me. Chu Li nodded and looked at him. He guessed what Liao Ming wanted him to do but pretended not to know. He wanted Liao Ming to say it himself. Liao Ming sighed. Almsgiver Chu, come and protect Fa Yuan, what do you think? Chu Li smiled. Of course, it's my duty. Liao Ming sighed in relief. He smiled and pressed his palms together. Thank you, Almsgiver Chu. Chu Li pressed his palms together. You're welcome, Master. I'm not helping because of you, I'm helping Fa Yuan. Of course. Liao Ming nodded. But I have to remind you, Almsgiver Chu, don't kill Deva if you can. Chu Li frowned. There's something I don't understand. Can Deva kill mortals? No. Liao Ming shook his head. Monk Liao Ming shook his head. Everything has its cause and effect. The power of karma is so strong that even a celestial cannot go against it. Killing mortals is a grave sin. Killing one more person means one more sin. When we return to the realm beyond heavens, we will be punished even more severely. What punishment? Chu Li scoffed. The lightest punishment would be losing one's lifespan and cultivation base. The most severe punishment would be direct reincarnation and banishment from the realm beyond heavens. Monk Liao Ming sighed. This is already the heaviest punishment. You won't let them disappear into thin air. Chu Li scoffed. Monk Liao Ming shook his head slowly. No. Chu Li's face darkened as he slowly nodded. This was clearly not treating mortals as humans and could not be exchanged for their lives. Monk Liao Ming said, a celestial killing a mortal is a grave sin, but a mortal killing a celestial, the sin is even heavier. Almsgiver Chu, I don't have to say any more, you should know the consequences. What are the consequences of me killing 5 celestials? Chu Li scoffed. Monk Liao Ming sighed and said, when you reach the realm beyond heaven, even if you don't reincarnate, I'm afraid your cultivation will be crippled and you will become an ordinary celestial being. At that time, how can the celestial beings you killed not come to seek revenge? You can imagine how difficult it is to live. What will happen to the Deva I've killed after they return to the Grandmaster's boundary? Chu Li asked. They will lose their cultivation, Monk Liao Ming said, and become an ordinary celestial being. Chu Li nodded slowly. If that's the case, then kill them. Almsgiver Chu, be careful. Monk Liao Ming said in a low voice. Chu Li scoffed. Who knows what will happen in the future? Kill them first. Sigh. Monk Liao Ming looked at him helplessly and said slowly, Heaven's power is like a prison, no one can resist it. Almsgiver Chu, think carefully, that's all I have to say. Chu Li said, thank you for the reminder, when will it be? In 3 days, Monk Liao Ming said. Chu Li said, all right, I will go to the Tempest Temple in 2 days. Thank you, Almsgiver Chu. Monk Liao Ming pressed his palms together and slowly disappeared. Chu Li pondered for a moment, then suddenly disappeared in a flash. A tall middle-aged man dressed in a purple robe stood at the peak of the mountain. The cold mountain breeze fluttered his purple robe. He looked down at the vast land with a dazed expression. Initially, when he received the task to return to this world, he was somewhat happy. After all, he was born and raised here and had left for 200 years. Now that he was back, he felt that things remained the same, but the people had changed. However, at this time, the martial arts world had been turned upside down. Chu Li had risen to power, and Du Feng in the south and Chu Li in the north. Du Feng had disappeared without a trace. It was said that he was in isolated cultivation after receiving an attack from an enlightened master and had not appeared since. Some people thought that he was dead, some thought that he was cultivating a divine technique. Chu Li, on the other hand, was like a comet streaking across the sky, shining brightly. He killed an enlightened master with his status as a grandmaster, and suppressed the enlightened master to the point where no one could stop him. It was a huge joke. He returned to this world to strengthen the sect, to recruit more disciples, to train them into grandmasters, and then to ascend to the grandmaster's boundary to strengthen the sect's strength in the boundary. If he wanted to strengthen the sect and recruit more qualified disciples, he would not know how long it would take if he had to search for them one by one. It was far better to let those qualified disciples come to him on their own. If he wanted to do that, he would have to be famous and become the top master. And if he wanted to be famous, the fastest way was to defeat Chu Li and amaze the world. Unfortunately, Chu Li was too strange. He did not know what sword technique he used, but he could actually kill a celestial. If he really returned to the boundary with a face full of dirt, he would definitely become a laughing stock and be demoted to the lowest level disciple of the sect. He did not know how many years it would take to climb up from the beginning. Thinking of this, his fighting spirit rose again. He could not admit defeat like this. Even if he died, he had to drag Chu Li with him. If he could kill Chu Li, he would have an explanation when he returned to the boundary and could be absolved of most of his crimes. Just as he thought of this, Chu Li slowly appeared behind him, silently, and then slashed down with his sword. The purple-robed middle-aged man's body suddenly shone brightly, as if a scorching sun had fallen down. He had already performed the secret skill of destroying everything indiscriminately. All of his power burst forth. After this attack, he would definitely die, but he could also kill Chu Li. Chu Li suddenly retreated and waved his long sword. Ding 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 ding. The invisible force hit the long sword and was shattered by the sword light. The remaining force hit Chu Li's white robe. The white robe shook violently, and he retreated 100 meters in the void. Another light door appeared in the sky, and then a white light shot towards the light door. The figure of the purple-robed middle-aged man appeared in front of the light door. He looked down at Chu Li with some unwillingness, then went into the light door and disappeared. Chu Li frowned. The attack of a celestial before his death was really powerful. Fortunately, he had the diamond indestructible body, otherwise he would have died. He disappeared again, and the next moment, he appeared next to another celestial, waved his sword, and killed him without any hindrance. He did not let any of the remaining celestials go. With the palm force that they left in his body, Chu Li found them one by one and then killed them one by one. He did not see any celestials coming to kill him. Chu Li's mood was a little heavy. He knew that once he stepped into the boundary, the road would be extremely difficult because he had offended too many people, not only celestials, but also enlightened masters. At this point, he could only desperately cultivate and reach the peak. Even if he went to the boundary, he would reach the level of Song Wuji and would not have to suffer anymore. Chapter 1739. Chu Li returned to his courtyard in the High Duke's public house and sat under the Glories Will tree. The rich spiritual energy of the Glories Will tree nourished his body. He felt refreshed and his mind was exceptionally clear. He did not feel uncomfortable killing heavenly beings at all. After they died, they immediately turned into a ray of light and ascended to the outland. He did not feel like they were being killed at all. This made Chu Li hate it. Heavenly beings seemed to be of a higher status than the mortals here. Even if they died, they would not really die. Under the moonlight, his expression was solemn. Suddenly, a white figure flashed and Shao Qi appeared in front of him. Chu Li looked at her in shock. Shao Qi was dressed in a snow-white robe. Her face was as white as jade, and her cold eyes were smiling. "How's my void diversion?" Chu Li was surprised. "You know it too?" "Yes." Shao Qi nodded. "It's actually just a thin layer of paper that can be broken with a gentle poke. I just haven't been able to properly understand it. Because of you, I've been lazy." She had never thought of learning it because whenever she thought of Chu Li, she could call him over and he would immediately send her to wherever she wanted to go. Just like in Chu Li's past life, he did not need to drive as long as he had a chauffeur. Chu Li nodded. "Is it the regal sword scripture?" "Yes." Shao Qi smiled. "The regal sword can break the void, but I've never understood it. Master just gave me a gentle poke and I immediately understood it, so I can come over. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Do you have something to tell me? Shao Qi sighed. I'm here to persuade you. Chu Li raised an eyebrow. Shao Qi said, Don't kill heavenly beings anymore. Chu Li frowned. Master Hui Qing said that? Master meant well, Shao Qi said. Heavenly beings have a different identity. They're different from the masters of our world. Killing heavenly beings will cause endless trouble, especially when they enter the Outland in the future. Chu Li laughed. Who said I'll enter the Outland in the future? Don't enter the Outland. Shao Qi was surprised. After becoming an enlightened master, you have to enter the Outland even if you don't want to. Chu Li shook his head. Even if you enter the Outland, you don't have to stay there. That's the case for Goddess Attraction Mountain's disciples. Master can enter and leave the Outland freely. He was a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, so he naturally had this kind of authority. His plan was to spend less time in Beyond Avalon. As long as he stayed in this world, no one could do anything to him. Shao Qi said, Your master will ascend to the Grandmaster's boundary sooner or later. For the sake of the future, it's better to kill fewer celestials. Chu Li looked at her helplessly and nodded lightly. Shao Qi smiled sweetly and held his big hand with her jade-like hand. She sighed and said, Let the celestials do whatever they want. As long as they don't do anything reckless, I'm sure they won't dare to provoke you again after this. Chu Li said, All right, as long as they don't provoke me, I won't bother with them. However, if they provoke me, then don't blame me for being rude. All right. Shao Qi was very satisfied with the result. The two of them held hands and were about to hug each other when a silhouette appeared. Lu Yurong appeared behind them in a white dress. Her face was covered with a white veil, revealing only a pair of bright eyes. She looked at them with a smile. Shao Qi looked at her with a frown and scoff. Lady Lu, you're in such a good mood to come here. I'm also Chu Li's wife. Lu Yurong chuckled. Of course I can come, right? Lady Lu seems to want to make it real, Shao Qi said lightly. Lu Yurong nodded, her beautiful eyes full of smiles. That's not necessarily impossible. What do you think, Third Lady Shao? You'll have to ask Chu Li, Shao Qi scoffed. Chu Li quickly waved his hand. Lady Lu, you don't come without a reason. If you have something to say, just say it. Isn't this a little inconvenient? Lu Yurong glanced at Shao Qi. Chu Li said impatiently, Do you want me to leave too? That would be more convenient? Lu Yurong chuckled. Both of you can't joke around. All right, I'm here to give you some advice. Don't kill celestials anymore. Chu Li frowned. These are the words of the mysterious Lady of Nine Heavens sect's leader, right? Lu Yurong nodded. Yes, the leader means well. You'll have endless trouble after killing celestials, especially when you reach the Grandmaster's boundary. Chu Li said, I really have no choice. All right, I'll be careful. Lu Yurong chuckled. Third Lady Shao, you've also become a disciple of a celestial, right? That's right. Shao Qi nodded. Lu Yurong said, Then let's see who can reach the Grandmaster's boundary first. All right. Shao Qi said. Lu Yurong waved her hand and smiled sweetly. Then, she suddenly disappeared. Shao Qi retracted her gaze and glanced at Chu Li. Chu Li sighed. Celestials and celestials are on the same side after all. It'll be troublesome in the future. It's fine. Shao Qi said, as long as it goes according to your heart. Chu Li smiled and hugged her tightly. The Tempest Temple still stood majestically under the setting sun. Under the setting sun, the Tempest Temple was majestic and solemn. The faint sound of chanting could be heard and the faint fragrance of sandalwood floated in the air, adding a sense of serenity and calmness. As soon as Chu Li appeared outside the Tempest Temple, before he could even knock on the temple door opened. Fa Yuan, dressed in a gray frock, slowly walked down the stairs and smiled. Brother Chu. Chu Li smiled and looked at Fa Yuan. Fa Yuan's gray frock fluttered in the wind. He was really a rare handsome man. His bald head shone under the setting sun. His aura was calm and calm, calmer and calmer than before. He had the demeanor of an eminent monk. Chu Li praised, "I didn't expect your cultivation level to improve so much." Fa Yuan's current cultivation level was high. It was obvious that he had cultivated some kind of divine technique that greatly increased his cultivation level. He even obtained the enlightenment technique. However, the force around his body was integrated and there was no disharmony. Even the enlightenment technique had been completely digested. Fa Yuan smiled. Spiritual light flash. It was only by coincidence that I was able to cultivate to this stage. I'm still not as good as you, Brother Chu. Chu Li shook his head. This is a gift from heaven. I got it by luck. It's different from yours. As Fa Yuan spoke to him, he brought him through the temple door and then to his temple. There was almost no one along the way. No one knew of Chu Li's arrival. It was obvious that the disciples were sent away in advance. Chu Li and Fa Yuan arrived at the temple and sat in a gazebo. Why? Chu Li frowned. Did you guys receive any news? Fa Yuan shook his head. This is a reminder from the Honorable Master. We should become an enlightened master as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be many accidents. We can only let Honorable Master Ming ascend earlier. Worried about those celestials? Chu Li frowned. They haven't been here for long. They won't be able to do much, right? It's hard to say. Fa Yuan shook his head. They can't be underestimated. I heard about Brother Chu killing celestials. It's really not appropriate. Chu Li nodded. This was the 4th time he had been advised. No matter how determined he was, he could not help but feel apprehensive. The power of the celestials was beyond his imagination. It felt like they were everywhere. He really had to be careful in the future. Fa Yuan said, "This time, there will probably be celestials coming out to cause trouble." Chu Li frowned. What does it have to do with them? If they can replace me and become an enlightened master, there will be endless benefits for the celestials, Fa Yuan said slowly. If they can kill me, their disciples might have a chance. Chu Li was stunned. His expression changed. He suddenly thought of the mysterious lady of the 9 heavens and Hui Qing. Chapter 1740. Chu Li asked thoughtfully, "What are these celestial beings doing down here?" Fa Yuan looked up at the sky and whispered, "From what I know, it's to train disciples. As long as they become grandmasters, they'll be able to step into the Outland and become a powerful aid." What kind of help does the Outland need? Chu Li frowned. I know there's a huge change in the Outland, but I don't know what it is. I don't know either. Fa Yuan shook his head, but I do know that the Outland is in desperate need of manpower. That's why the celestial beings are desperately searching for manpower to train grandmasters. Chu Li said, "Becoming a grandmaster can't be done quickly. It requires comprehension and the surpassing state." He was lucky to be able to break through and become a grandmaster, but the others needed the surpassing state. There were very few surpassing states in the world, and each of them was a unique resource of the famous sections. They would never lend it out. Only the core disciples knew about it, and some sects only had 1 or 2 people. Fa Yuan sighed, "That's why the world will be in chaos." Chu Li said, "As an enlightened master, you have to deal with a lot of things." "Yes." Fa Yuan looked serious and sighed, "I have a long way to go. I'll need Brother Chu's help when the time comes." Chu Li waved his hand and smiled. "I'm far away and can't help here. I can't count on you, Fa Yuan. The peace of the Ji dynasty needs me and His Majesty's protection," Fa Yuan said seriously. "Brother Chu, you're also a citizen of the Ji dynasty. You shouldn't just stand by and watch." Chu Li sighed, "I'll help if I can. You just said that you won't let me kill more celestial beings." Fa Yuan smiled, "Brother Chu can't, but I can. Brother Chu, you just need to help, you don't have to kill them yourself. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Becoming an enlightened master means you can kill celestial beings? Fa Yuan said slowly. An enlightened master killing a celestial being is not a sin. On the contrary, a celestial being killing an enlightened master is a sin. Chu Li frowned and thought about the relationship. It seemed that an enlightened master had a higher status than a celestial being, but their martial arts were usually not as good as a celestial being. Otherwise, the Outland would not have increased the enlightened master's martial arts by so many times just to deal with the celestial beings. Chu Li said, "This time, the celestial beings will come to cause trouble. What measures does your temple have to deal with them?" Sigh. Fa Yuan sighed and shook his head. What a sin. If the celestial beings really wanted to make a move, no matter how many people there were, it would be useless. Yet, all the senior brothers and seniors insisted on making a move. Chu Li frowned and said, "In my opinion, we should ask them to withdraw so that they won't be distracted." "I will convey Brother Chu's opinion." Fa Yuan nodded lightly. Chu Li said, "But it's strange too. The news of Master Liao Ming's ascension should be kept a secret." Fa Yuan pointed at the sky. Chu Li came to a sudden realization. He scoffed and said nothing more. It was obvious that the news was passed down from the realm beyond heaven. To be able to pass down such secret information, there was simply no way to keep it a secret. The tallest pagoda in the Great Lane Temple was like a sword piercing the sky. Moonlight sprinkled down from the sky, and the moonlight was like water. The three people on the top floor of the pagoda seemed to be draped in a light veil. The three of them were sitting cross-legged in the middle, forming a triangle. Master Liao Ming wore a purple gold robe. His snow-white beard was neatly combed without a single strand out of place. His eyes were slightly closed, and he looked solemn. He bathed in the moonlight without moving, as if he did not know the passage of time. Fa Yuan also wore a purple gold robe. From now on, he would be the strongest person in the Great Lane Temple, and also the pillar of the Tempest Temple. To Fa Yuan, this was too much of a burden. Master Liao Ming ascended to the enlightened master's position at the age of 93. At that time, he was already very experienced. He had enough wisdom and experience to handle any situation. Fa Yuan was only 26 years old. Although he had always been training in the mortal world, he lacked 10 years of experience. Chu Li sat beside the two of them. He was as calm as still water, with the taming tiger divine's sword on his knees. Tonight, he might have to go on a killing spree. The surroundings of the pagoda were filled with gray-robed monks. Each of them stood as straight as a pine tree, with their palms pressed together motionlessly. It was as if they were statues of Buddha standing beside the pagoda, creating a solemn atmosphere. Kaboom! A sudden clap of thunder sounded in the sky. The sky was clear and cloudless, and the bright moon was not obscured. This clap of thunder was a little strange. It shook the entire sky, and the Tempest Temple seemed to be shaking. Chu Li looked up at the sky. Master Liao Ming also looked up at the sky. After a moment of concentration, he pressed his palms together and sighed. "It's time, Fa Yuan. The Tempest Temple will be in your hands from now on." "Don't worry, Honorable Master." Fa Yuan pressed his palms together. Master Liao Ming pressed his palms together at Chu Li. "Thank you, almsgiver Chu." Chu Li pressed his palms together. "Master, you don't have to be so courteous. If that's the case, then I'm going to ascend to heaven." Master Liao Ming stood up and slowly floated into the void. He looked at the monks on the ground, pressed his palms together, and chanted the name of Buddha. Amitabha! Amitabha! The monks chanted the name of Buddha in unison. It was grand and solemn, and it made people feel deep veneration. Chu Li looked up at Master Liao Ming. His body began to emit light, and soon it was like a bright moon. The light was gentle at first, but it gradually became stronger. Suddenly, a pillar of light descended from the sky. It was as bright as the sun, and it shone directly on Master Liao Ming's body. At the same time, it shone on Fa Yuan, who was sitting on the pagoda. Fa Yuan's purple gold kasaya fluttered, and it gradually floated up. It was lifted by an invisible force, and it reached the same height as Master Liao Ming. The two of them stood side by side, bathed in the bright light. They could be seen from a few miles away in the night sky. Chu Li stood below, and he could also feel the spiritual force of the outland. This spiritual force was very strange, and it was different from the usual spiritual force. He could feel his cultivation level rising rapidly. He looked down at the monks under the pagoda, and saw them retreating as if avoiding snakes and scorpions. They made way for the light. Chu Li suddenly realized that the spiritual force of the outland could not be absorbed by just anyone. Fa Yuan could only absorb it because he was the enlightened master chosen by the outland. Chu Li himself could absorb it because of the supreme diamond, supreme scripture, and the indestructible body of titanium. Stop! Suddenly, a shout was heard. Then, 9 figures passed by the monks, and their bodies shone brightly. They shot into the sky above the pagoda, and were about to rush towards Fa Yuan and Master Liao Ming. Chu Li scoffed. As monk Liao Ming expected, there were really celestials disturbing him. In a flash, he appeared in front of Fa Yuan. He slowly pulled out his long sword, and the power of the heaven-murdering 3 forms was fully displayed. The power of the sword shrouded in all directions. The 9 celestials felt the murderous intent, as if a sword was stabbing at them. Every one of them had the same feeling. Their bodies could not help but stagnate, and they floated down. Chu Li stood in the void and looked down at the 9 of them. He sneered. "If you want to die, then do it." "Who are you?" a glowing figure shouted. His voice was like a bronze bell, resounding through the night sky, and it could be heard from a few miles away. Chu Li said coldly, "Chu Li." The 9 celestials' expressions changed slightly. Chu Li said, "If you dare to cause trouble, don't blame me for being ruthless. I don't care about the few of you." "Chu Li, do you know the consequences of killing a celestial?" one of them shouted. Chu Li said lightly, "If I kill them, then I kill them. Who cares about the consequences? Scram now." "Good, good," that person shouted. "Let's see how long you can be arrogant." Chapter 1741. Chu Li watched as they dragged their long shadows and disappeared into the sky. He was stunned. He never thought that he could scare off the 9 celestial beings so easily. The 9 celestial beings were very powerful. Fa Yuan and monk Liao Ming would not be able to handle them. However, he could not believe that they were scared off by his words. He turned his head and looked around with some hesitation. Could it be that they were plotting something? He then shook his head. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, even the celestial beings would be able to sense it. There was no one else. The 9 celestial beings were scared off by him. It seemed that he had made a name for himself as the celestial being killer. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud thunder in the sky. A huge pillar of light fell again and enveloped monk Liao Ming alone. Fa Yuan was bounced off and floated to Chu Li's side. Monk Liao Ming looked down at the monks and bowed with pressed palms. He then followed the pillar of light and rose into the sky. The huge light door slowly appeared. It was as if it had always been there but had hidden itself. Now, it returned to its original appearance. The light door was unusually bright. It lit up half the sky and covered the light of the moon. Half the people in the world would be able to see this huge and majestic light door. Monk Liao Ming entered the light door. Before he entered, he turned around and bowed with pressed palms again. The monks around the pagoda all bowed and chanted loudly to send monk Liao Ming to heaven. Through the light door, people could vaguely see the buildings behind the door. There were pavilions and terraces with white lotuses floating in the air. It was a breathtaking sight. The huge light door slowly closed. The sky gradually returned to dusk. Only the bright moon shone brightly. Its clear light shone in the sky. It was peaceful and quiet. Chu Li turned to Fa Yuan. Fa Yuan's purple gold robe fluttered. He still had not completely digested the enlightened master's power. When he felt Chu Li's gaze, he opened his eyes. Suddenly, lightning pierced through the sky, almost blinding people. Chu Li smiled. Fa Yuan, congratulations. It went so smoothly. Fa Yuan bowed with pressed palms and sighed. I didn't expect it to go so smoothly. He also understood that if Chu Li had not been there to scare off the 9 celestial beings, it would have been very difficult for him to get through this tonight. Under the siege of the 9 great celestial beings, Honorable Master Liao Ming was completely powerless to resist, and he would have died without a doubt. Although the Grandmasters had bestowed him the power to become an enlightened master, it was impossible for them to help him fight off his enemies. If these celestial beings killed him, there might already be Grandmasters waiting on the other side, and they would immediately become enlightened masters. It did not matter if he died, as he had already transcended the limits of life and death. However, if the Tempest Temple were to decline, he would become a sinner. From now on, you're an enlightened master. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. How enviable! Fa Yuan smiled. There's no need for Brother Chu to lie to me. An enlightened master like me is beneath you. Chu Li shook his head and did not say anything. My path is long and endless. I don't know if I'll be able to walk to the end. It's better not to talk about it. Let's talk about those celestial beings first. They're lawless. Since you're an enlightened master and can kill them, you should take care of them. Fa Yuan furrowed his brows and said, The celestial beings are not to be trifled with. We shouldn't provoke them if we can. Otherwise, I'm afraid the disciples of the temple will. Chu Li scoffed. Fa Yuan, this doesn't sound like something an enlightened master would say. Fa Yuan smiled. What should an enlightened master say? I should be fearless, and I'm the only one in the world. Chu Li said. These celestial beings need to be taught a lesson. Look at how they were just now, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. As long as you're tough, they won't dare to act recklessly. All right, I'll try my best. Fa Yuan nodded. When the time comes, I'll need Brother Chu's help. Of course. Chu Li nodded and smiled. With these fellows causing trouble, the Ji dynasty will be in chaos. Many innocent people will lose their lives, so it's best to kill them all. Fa Yuan chuckled and shook his head. Brother Chu, don't be so bloodthirsty. It's not good for your body. After this incident, he did not have a good impression of the celestial beings. He wanted nothing more than to get rid of them. However, as a monk, he was compassionate. He could not just shout and kill so brazenly. Chu Li said, Fa Yuan, you're an enlightened master now. You don't have to be as reserved as before. It's better to be more carefree. That's true. Fa Yuan chuckled. Brother Chu, come with me. Chu Li looked at him. Fa Yuan came to the side of the pagoda and bowed to the monks below. Honorable masters, senior uncles, senior brothers, junior brothers, please return to your positions. Ahmed bow. The monks bowed solemnly with smiles on their faces. An enlightened master returning to the Tempest Temple was more important than anything else. Although Master Liao Ming had ascended to heaven, the Tempest Temple had one less enlightened master. Now that Fa Yuan had taken over the enlightened master's position, the Tempest Temple was still number 1 in the Ji dynasty. Chu Li followed Fa Yuan down the pagoda and arrived at an unfamiliar Zen courtyard. The atmosphere in the Zen courtyard was different from Fa Yuan's. It was antique. The trees in the courtyard were all ancient trees. They were strong and thick, and the spiritual energy was rich. The green brick floor had been polished. Everywhere revealed the vicissitudes of time. It made one's heart calm. This is? Chuli looked at the Zen courtyard and smiled. This is a good place. The spiritual energy from hundreds of miles is gathered here. The person who built this courtyard must have been a top-notch formation master. Yes, this was built by the ancestral masters. It is the residence of every enlightened master. Fa Yuan nodded. He looked at the antique courtyard with a complicated expression. This was the place of his dreams. Now, he had finally achieved his goal. He had become an enlightened master and did not disappoint the ancestral masters. Chuli smiled. This place does not bury the identity of an enlightened master. Why did you bring me here? Fa Yuan smiled and walked into the main house. He came out quickly and handed Chuli an antique jade box. The jade box seemed to be made of low-quality broken jade. It could have been that it had been here for too long. Time had corroded the fine jade into this state. Chuli took it with a smile. He opened the jade box and saw an antique silk book lying in the box. There were 3 big words on the cover: Sparrow Taming Technique. Chuli's eyes widened. He turned to look at Fa Yuan. Fa Yuan smiled. This is a secret manual in the temple's collection. However, because it is not compatible with our Dharma, no one has cultivated it. It is hidden in the rare scripture pavilion, and no one has asked about it. Chuli laughed. You don't have to say more. Those old monks must have known about this heart technique, but they did not want to give it to me. Fa Yuan smiled awkwardly but did not deny it. Chuli shook his head. Fa Yuan, none of the old monks in your temple are good people. They are really cunning. If I don't help you this time, will I never get this sparrow taming technique? Of course not. Fa Yuan smiled embarrassedly. Brother Chu was not fated with this heart technique before. After he became an enlightened master, he had absolute control over the Tempest Temple. Naturally, he would not be stingy and would give this secret manual to Chuli. However, he did not know about it before. It was the elders who hid it from him on purpose. Chuli shook his head and smiled as he flipped through it. This was the real vermilion power technique. He tried to comprehend it as he flipped through it. When he was done, he could already conclude that this secret manual was the real vermilion power technique. Since then, he had gathered all 4 spirit beast heart technique. Although 2 of them were incomplete, he could see the light. He was only a small step away from truly cultivating them and becoming an enlightened master. Chapter 1742. Chuli carefully kept the vermilion bird power technique and smiled. I'm very satisfied with this gift. Thank you, Fa Yuan. Fa Yuan shook his head. This is what Brother Chu deserves. There's no need to thank me. If it wasn't for Brother Chu's help, I wouldn't be where I am today. Brother Chu, how's your progress? Have you found the other heart techniques? Chuli frowned. I found the tiger taming technique. The other 2 are incomplete, including the dragon taming technique from Goddess Attraction Mountain. He trusted Fa Yuan very much. He was kind and would not lie. Fa Yuan asked, Brother Chu, you've obtained the black tortoise power? Chuli nodded slowly. Fa Yuan smiled. I thought Brother Chu would ask for it with great fanfare. I didn't expect you to get it so quietly. It's a coincidence. I'm just lucky. Chuli smiled. If it wasn't for the vitality-devouring turtle, he would have to force himself to get the black tortoise power. The Black Tortoise Mountain's teachings were passed down to the next level. Almost no one reached the top level. Those at the top level were cultivating in the Black Tortoise Hall and would not come out. If he rushed in and knocked them out, he might not be able to get what he wanted. Maybe the Black Tortoise power had other protections to prevent it from being leaked. However, to the current him, it wasn't that hard to come by. The most frustrating thing was the vermilion bird divine art. No matter how powerful he was, there was no place for him to start. It was as if he was trying to swallow the heavens. Now that he had finally obtained the vermilion bird power technique, It meant a lot to Chu Li. "Brother Chu, why don't you cultivate it here?" Fa Yuan suggested. Chu Li nodded. He understood Fa Yuan's concerns. The newly advanced enlightened master had not reached his best state. He needed some time to digest and his strength would increase again. His current strength was not enough to fight against the Deva's boundary. Chu Li stayed in the Tempest Temple for the next few days to cultivate the vermilion bird power technique. Unfortunately, his progress was slow. Although he had comprehended the other 3 heart techniques and mastered them, it was useless to just comprehend them. The key was that he needed the power of the vermilion bird to cultivate. Relying on the inner force of the supreme Vajra scripture, he managed to cultivate 3 layers in one go, but the higher he went, the slower it would be. Without the help of spirit beasts and just by cultivating on his own, his progress was incomparably slow. He needed to grind it bit by bit, and he didn't know when he would be able to cultivate to perfection. Chu Li had thought about the vermilion bird's fire, but unfortunately, the vermilion bird's fire was not very beneficial to his cultivation. The vermilion bird's fire and the vermilion bird's power were not the same thing, and neither could replace the other. He was not in a hurry to push forward. The key was still to find the vermilion bird. He couldn't help but think of the little vermilion bird. Unfortunately, the little vermilion bird hated the spirit beast sex mental cultivation technique to the core and would definitely not cooperate with him. He had to think of another way. This wasn't an easy task and he had to do it step by step. The first step was to obtain the heaven-murdering art and enter the 100,000 mountain range, so that he could protect himself from the spirit tiger. Otherwise, if he couldn't enter the 100,000 mountain range, there was no way he could encounter the vermilion bird. Chu Li almost always stayed in the Tempest Temple. Other than occasionally going back to Goddess Attraction Mountain to visit Shao Qi, he did not even spend the night there. He could now control the spirit tiger's spiritual energy and the vermilion bird's fire, so it did not hinder him from being intimate with Shao Qi. Unfortunately, Shao Qi was always in isolated cultivation and had no time to spare, so she could only continue to be alone. Half a month later, Fa Yuan had completely mastered the enlightened master's power. The morning air was exceptionally fresh. The Tempest Temple was still shrouded in the chanting of Buddhist scriptures, solemn and solemn. Chu Li and Fa Yuan chatted over tea in the temple, while Chu Li prepared to leave. Since Fa Yuan had mastered the enlightened master's power, he was not that afraid of the Devas. Moreover, if the Devas were to approach him, he could directly ask for help and even escape immediately. An enlightened master was not that weak when facing a Devas, on the contrary, they were stronger. The sound of hurried footsteps was heard. A middle-aged monk strode to the courtyard's door and gently knocked. "Junior brother. Senior brother Xingyin, please come in," Fa Yuan said. A tall and burly monk wearing a tight gray frock entered. He was already middle-aged, but he was brimming with energy. At this moment, his face was solemn as he pressed his palms together and bowed. "Junior brother, I have an urgent matter to report." "Senior brother, just say it." "Brother Chu is not an outsider," Fa Yuan said. Chu Li looked at the middle-aged monk with a smile. Xingyin hesitated for a moment before he slowly nodded. "One of the heart of Azura is missing." Fa Yuan was surprised. "One is missing? Did someone invade the spirit prison tower? Did the Devas do this?" As he spoke, his face darkened and the enlightened god field was naturally released. Monk Xingyin's face instantly turned pale, and he could not help but take a step back. Fa Yuan was shocked and quickly retracted his enlightened god field. He frowned. "What happened?" Xingyin sighed in relief and shook his head. "It's inexplicable. It disappeared without a trace, and there were no signs of invasion. It was still fine last night, and we were still looking at it at night, but in the morning, one was missing." Chu Li's expression changed too. The heart of Azura was not a trivial matter. One heart of Azura could resurrect an Azura that was immortal and bloodthirsty, and no one knew how many people it had killed. Fa Yuan asked, "Who was guarding it last night?" "Honorable Master Kong Wu and Honorable Master Kong Qing." Xing Yin sighed. Fa Yuan frowned and did not say anything. He had confidence in the two honorable masters' martial arts and character. They would not have done it privately, and it was impossible for them to have invaded without a sound. So why did they suddenly disappear? "Brother Chu, follow me to take a look," Fa Yuan said. Chu Li nodded. "Let's take a look." The three of them left the temple and passed through a few rows of temples before they arrived at a towering Buddhist pagoda. This pagoda was not as tall as the previous pagoda that was used to seal the heaven god, but in terms of grandeur, it was superior. It naturally exuded a sense of solemnity and righteousness, no different from the artistic conception of Buddhism. Chu Li exclaimed, "This spirit prison tower lives up to its name." Fa Yuan nodded. The honorable masters in the temple chant scriptures every day to dispel the evil energy of the heart of Azura in the tower. Unfortunately, the evil energy of the heart of Azura is so strong that it is almost impossible to dispel. Chu Li said, "It's better than not dispelling it. Let's hope that the heart of Azura that escaped did not have such a strong evil energy." Fa Yuan shook his head. What a sin! If the heart of Azura escaped and killed wantonly in order to grow, then it would be the Tempest Temple's sin. They died because of the Tempest Temple's negligence. Chu Li said, "Can we find the heart of Azura?" Although the Tempest Temple did not cultivate divine powers, they did not lack divine ability practitioners, especially those high monks who cultivated in literature. After the Buddha's light was perfected, divine powers would naturally appear. However, to the Tempest Temple, these divine powers were obstacles to the path to nirvana. It was better to let go of them. If they could not let go, it would be difficult to achieve perfection. They could not be freed, which was completely different from the Titanium Temple's cultivation path. Fa Yuan said slowly, "We should be able to find it, but I'm afraid it will be too late by the time we find it." Chu Li said, "Then let's find it as soon as possible." The honorable masters and the others should have already started searching, but we still need to find out how it disappeared. If we can't find the source, it is inevitable that something like this will happen again. When that time comes, the honorable masters will not be able to split themselves and the world will be in chaos. Fa Yuan nodded. There were 120 hearts of Azura in the spirit prison tower, including the strongest heart of the Azura king. Chapter 1743. When they arrived in front of the demon suppression tower, a narrow bronze door slowly opened. A skinny old monk with white eyebrows and beard stepped out slowly with his palms pressed together. "Honorable Master Kong Wu," Fa Yuan returned the greeting. "Only one heart of Azura disappeared?" The skinny old monk nodded slowly. "Only one." His snow-white eyebrows drooped to the corner of his mouth. His triangular eyes looked a little fierce, but his gaze was calm and clear. He had really reached the state of mind like still water, without any ripples. Even when such a big event happened, he was still calm and collected. "How did it disappear?" Fa Yuan asked. "Did you find out?" "I don't know." The skinny old monk shook his head slowly. "It shouldn't be because of the demon suppression tower. It can't be that heart of Azura king, right?" Fa Yuan asked. Kong Wu said, "It's a heart of Azura from 100 years ago. I thought it had been washed away by the teachings of Buddhism and regained its Buddhist nature. I didn't expect it to suddenly disappear, as if it disappeared into thin air in this world." "Can't find it?" Fa Yuan's expression changed slightly. Kong Wu shook his head slowly. "Brother Kong Qing has already tried, but he can't find it." "How can this be?" Fa Yuan frowned. Kong Wu shook his head without saying anything, obviously not knowing the reason. "Then let's go in and take a look," Fa Yuan said. Kong Wu glanced at Chu Li. Fa Yuan said, Brother Chu is not an outsider, he can also help. Since Fa Yuan said so, then please go in. Kong Wu bowed to Chu Li with his palms pressed together. Chu Li pressed his palms together to return the greeting and followed him inside. Fa Yuan entered the demon suppression tower last and closed the bronze door. The inside of the tower was completely different from what Chu Li had imagined. His omniscient mirror could not observe the situation here because there was an invisible force blocking it. When he stepped into the tower, he found it bright. Sunlight shone through the top of the demon suppression tower, but it was brighter than outside. The walls of the tower were engraved with Buddhist scriptures and statues. The atmosphere of Buddhism was thick, and it was full of righteousness. It could really purge evil, and the name of Demon Suppression Tower was true. He also found that there was not a trace of spiritual energy in the tower, just like in his Jiuyuan Valley. At this moment, there was a young monk sitting cross-legged on a meditation cushion, and he didn't move at all as if he was meditating. This young monk seemed to be around the same age as Fa Yuan. He had a square face, thick eyebrows and big eyes. Although he was not considered handsome, he was not ugly either. His skin was smooth and delicate, and his eyebrows were so black that they shone. His whole body was shrouded in an exuberant heroic spirit, which was similar to Chu Li. In addition to the Buddha statues and Buddhist scriptures on the walls of the pagoda, there were also small holes in which hearts of Asura were fixed. At first glance, it was a little frightening. If these Asuras were to really come back to life, the Yao Ceiling Pagoda would definitely not be able to suppress them. Honorable Master Kong Qing. Fa Yuan bowed with pressed palms. Did you find anything? The young monk slowly opened his eyes, and his gaze was clear and calm. He shook his head lightly and said, "No. I've searched everywhere but found nothing. It seems as if I've been enlightened and ascended." Chu Li looked at the young monk. His whole body was shrouded in a layer of brilliance, but it was not the white light of a celestial being, but a kind of golden light. Obviously, his Buddhist cultivation had reached a very deep level, almost reaching the Arhat realm. The depth of Buddhist cultivation was really rare. The young monk looked at Chu Li and bowed with pressed palms. "Are you almsgiver Chu Li?" Chu Li bowed with pressed palms. Chu Li greets Great Master Kong Qing. Even if he met Monk Ming, he would not be so respectful, but towards Kong Qing, he was respectful from the bottom of his heart. This was the true virtue of a high monk. Great Master Kong Qing shook his head. "Almsgiver Chu, you've come at the right time. Did you find anything?" Chu Li looked up at the sky and pointed. "It should have risen." Fa Yuan looked at him in surprise. Chu Li said, "I can feel a trace of Grandmaster's aura. It's obvious that Grandmaster has taken action to guide it over." "This pagoda bans all spiritual energy," Kong Wu said. Chu Li nodded. "It can ban the spiritual energy of this world, but it can't ban the spiritual energy of Grandmaster." This was the same situation as Jiuyuan Valley. He suddenly thought that the existence of Jiuyuan Valley might be related to this Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Unfortunately, too much time had passed, and it was impossible to find out. There was also no need to find out. He turned his head to look at Fa Yuan and smiled. "Fa Yuan, you should be able to feel it, right?" After listening to Chu Li's words, Fa Yuan fell into deep thought. When he entered the pagoda earlier, he also felt a familiar feeling, but he did not pay much attention to it. He thought that it was familiar because he had been here before. Now that Chu Li pointed it out, he immediately understood. It was the aura of Grandmaster. Fa Yuan was puzzled. Why would Grandmaster Asura be guided? Chu Li shook his head. Who knows about Grandmaster Asura? Everyone keeps it a secret and dare not say much. Asura, Fa Yuan said, could it be that the descent of these Skylanders has something to do with Asura? Kong Qing said, Asura are indestructible. They are not considered strong in this world, but they will be stronger in Grandmaster Asura. According to what I know, Azura come from the Azura realm, and they are best at fighting. Fa Yuan furrowed his brows. Then this Azura won't come back, right? Kong Qing said. If they enter Grandmaster Azura, they will not come back. To Azura, this whirling world is like a prison. That's good. Fa Yuan nodded. As long as they don't appear in this world. Chu Li pondered. Master Kong Qing, is there really no way to destroy Azura? According to what I know, there is no way to destroy Azura in this world. Kong Qing shook his head. Chu Li sighed. If that's the case, we can only suppress them. Yes. Kong Qing nodded. Fa Yuan said, since they came to our demon prison tower to receive the heart of Azura, I wonder if... He frowned slightly, extremely dissatisfied with the Skylanders. Even with a peaceful and kind heart, he still had a faint desire to kill. I want to put nephew Liao Ming's remains into the tower. Kong Qing said. This. Fa Yuan hesitated. The enlightened master's remains had to be put into a specialized pagoda to protect everyone in the temple. The enlightened master dojo formed could prevent grandmasters from ascending to Grandmaster Azura. They could continue to live in the enlightened master dojo as if they were in the temple. Kong Qing said, if nephew Liao Ming knows about this, he will not object. All right, we'll listen to Honorable Master Kong Qing. Fa Yuan slowly nodded. Kong Qing said, with the enlightened master's remains, we can hide from Grandmaster Azura's prying eyes. They will not be able to see the demon prison tower. Chu Li smiled. The enlightened master's remains did have the ability to hide the secrets of heaven. There were enlightened masters in the imperial mausoleum of the Ji dynasty. It was because the enlightened master's remains could hide the secrets of heaven that the enlightened master could not be discovered by Grandmaster Azura. The Grandmaster Azura only recognized two kinds of enlightened masters. One was to become an enlightened master, the other was to cultivate the heart technique of the four spirit beasts to become an enlightened master. The others were not enlightened masters and would be destroyed by lightning, just like Song Jifan. Fa Yuan and Chu Li exited the demon prison tower and arrived outside the Tempest Temple. Fa Yuan bowed with pressed palms. Brother Chu, why are you frowning? Chu Li laughed. I'm worried about something. What is it? The descent of the Skylanders has already caused chaos. If Azura from Grandmaster Azura descends, what will happen? Chu Li asked. Fa Yuan frowned and said slowly, it won't be that bad, right? Chu Li shook his head. Always think of the worst. If the Skylanders can descend, why can't Azura? I will continue to investigate the heart of Azura, Fa Yuan said. Chapter 1744. Under the bright sun, Chu Li stood at the top of the mountain with his hands behind his back. His white robe fluttered in the wind. He looked down at the mountains. The mountains were verdant and verdant, overflowing with greenery. What a beautiful mountain, great rivers and mountains. If they truly became the battlefield of Celestials and Azuras, then the people would definitely suffer greatly, the situation unspeakably tragic. He couldn't allow this to happen. But if it happened, what could he do to stop it? He could kill one celestial being, but could he kill all 10 celestial beings? Moreover, the Azuras were the most troublesome. The Azuras under his control had always behaved themselves and cultivated in the Divine Mountain. These Azuras were not a concern, but the Azuras that descended from the Outland were a concern. It was just like how Grandmasters were nothing in this realm. Once they stepped into the Outland and became a celestial being, they would then descend and become an existence on par with enlightened masters. One could only imagine how tyrannical the Azuras that descended from the Outland would be. Thinking about this, he became more anxious. He wanted to get the heaven-murdering script and enter the 100,000 hills. It would be best if he could find the vermilion bird to help him cultivate. If that didn't work, He could use the old trick of Goddess Attraction Mountain and cultivate the vermilion bird himself. Unfortunately, it would take a long time. Song Jifan, come out and meet me. He suddenly looked up to the sky and let out a long roar that resounded through the sky. After a while, there was no movement. Chu Li frowned and said, "Is the leader of the Changshan denomination a coward? You don't dare to show yourself?" His voice was like a bronze bell, echoing in the sky and in the valley for a long time. But after a while, there was still no movement. Chu Li laughed and said, "Leader Song, are you afraid? Don't worry, I won't kill you. I just want to ask you a few questions and spar with you. If you don't show yourself, I'll have to start with the disciples of the floating mountain." His voice was calm and unhurried, echoing endlessly in the valley. After a while, there was still no movement. Chu Li frowned, feeling that something was wrong. From what he knew, Song Jifan didn't have this much patience. He wasn't that experienced. He had already come out to fight with him. Even if he couldn't win, he wouldn't retreat. Song Jifan allowed his martial arts to be weaker than his opponent, but he wouldn't allow himself to be timid. Chu Li took a deep breath and activated the omniscient mirror to its limit. The floating mountain was hidden within the formation, so it was difficult for the omniscient mirror to detect it. However, the omniscient mirror was no longer the same as before. Even if it could not detect it, it could still vaguely sense its existence. However, there was nothing in the sky. There was no sign of any strange objects or floating mountains. Chu Li's expression changed slightly as he thought of a possibility. The floating mountain had left. The so-called floating mountain naturally didn't just float in the sky, it could also move in the sky like a boat on the sea. Chu Li shook his head. Such a magical floating mountain was really enviable. With such a floating mountain, there was no need to worry that others would come knocking on their doors. There was simply no place to look for it. His face turned gloomy, and in a flash, he appeared at the Jingyan Mountain. Unfortunately, the valley of the Jingyan Mountain was already empty, and everything had disappeared, as though it had never been here. He could no longer sense Lu Jun and Elder Fong. Unwilling to give up, he used the Heavenly Star Void skill to deduce their location. As an enlightened master, Song Jifan could neither deduce nor sense them, so he could only start from Lu Jun and Elder Fong. Unfortunately, there was an invisible force that was blocking his deduction. He could vaguely sense their existence, but he could not actually sense them or pinpoint their location. He could only know that they were still alive. Chu Li frowned. Chu Li frowned. This invisible force could have come from a treasure or from the Grandmaster's boundary. Was it Song Wuji's doing? Thinking about this, his heart trembled. He thought that he might not be Song Wuji's opponent now. If Song Wuji really came personally, he would most likely lose or even lose his life. He could not help but fear this. However, he had to get the Heaven Slaughtering script no matter what, or else it would be difficult to deal with the Spirit Tiger. He could not enter the 100,000 hills, and he could not just grind the vermilion bird power and cultivate for decades before becoming an enlightened master. He searched the sky for a while but did not find anything, so he suddenly disappeared and appeared in the imperial residence of King An. The imperial residence of King An was very quiet. Without Shao Qi and Shao Shi, the entire imperial residence seemed to be exceptionally quiet. Chu Li appeared in the backyard, and Hui Qing was leisurely admiring the blooming flowers in the gazebo. She wore a loose Taoist robe, which made her face look clean and flawless as if there was no dirt on it. When she saw Chu Li, she glanced at him and continued to admire the flowers. She had no intention of talking to him. Chu Li came to the gazebo and sat opposite her. "Master, I have something to ask." "Speak," Hui Qing said lightly. Chu Li said, "I want to find the floating mountain." "The floating mountain?" Hui Qing glanced at him. "Song Wuji's floating mountain?" Chu Li nodded slowly, "Yes." Hui Qing said, "I've never dealt with Song Wuji before, so I don't know where the floating mountain is." Chu Li stared at her. Master, can you help me find the floating mountain? Why are you looking for the floating mountain? Hui Qing asked. Chu Li said, I want to get the heaven slaughtering script. Heaven slaughtering script? Hui Qing frowned at Chu Li and said coldly, Why do you cultivate that thing? To deal with supreme spirit beasts, Chu Li said calmly. You're crazy. Hui Qing shook her head. Chu Li looked at her quietly. Hui Qing said, Even if you cultivate the heaven slaughtering script, you won't be able to deal with supreme spirit beasts. Moreover, the heaven slaughtering script isn't something good. It's almost like a demonic technique, it consumes one's lifespan. Chu Li seemed to have understood something. No wonder it was so powerful. He realized that secret skills that consumed one's lifespan were usually very powerful. Hui Qing said, Every time you use the heaven slaughtering script, you'll lose at least 10 years of your lifespan. How long do you have to dare use that? It's better than dying immediately, Chu Li said. Even if you cultivate the heaven slaughtering script, you won't be able to defeat supreme spirit beasts, Hui Qing said lightly. With your current cultivation level, it's wishful thinking to fight against supreme spirit beasts. For the sake of your life and Shao Qi's, it's better to give up. Master, you can't deal with supreme spirit beasts? Chu Li asked. Hui Qing shook her head, no. Chu Li sighed. It seems like supreme spirit beasts are invincible. If you can cultivate to the great enlightened master's boundary, you can fight against supreme spirit beasts. But that's in the Grand Master's boundary. There's no great enlightened master in this world. You're not even an enlightened master yet, let alone one. Chu Li's spirit was lifted. He finally had a direction to strive for. If he could not reach Supreme Spirit Beast's boundary, no matter how much he cultivated, it would be too hopeless. Hui Qing sneered and shook her head. Great enlightened master was simply wishful thinking. It was difficult to become an enlightened master, and almost impossible to become one. It was just a wishful thinking of the Devas. How many years had it been since there was a great enlightened master? Song Wuji and the others were only close to it, but the chances of them becoming one were less than 1 in a million. It was better to pursue one's own path than to pursue the great enlightened master. One could achieve the Tai Ching path and live as long as the heavens. That was the true freedom. Master, you can't find the floating mountain? Chu Li stood up and said, Forget it then. I'll ask Master for help. I'm sure he can find it. You want to kill Song Jifan? Hui Qing asked. Chu Li shook his head. I won't kill him. I just want to force out the heaven slaughtering script. Chapter 1745. Hui Qing scoffed. You don't dare to kill him, right? Chu Li nodded. Yes, I'm afraid of Song Wuji, so I don't dare to kill Song Jifan. Don't you think you're bullying the weak and afraid of the strong? Hui Qing looked at his face with interest, trying to see his subtle expressions. Chu Li laughed. It's human nature to bully the weak and fear the strong. I'm no exception. If I really provoke Song Wuji, there will be endless trouble, so I can't kill Song Jifan. Very good, your comprehension is really good, no wonder you've achieved so much. Hui Qing nodded in satisfaction. It was human nature to bully the weak and fear the strong, but people often could not accept themselves like this. They did not dare to admit it and did not want to become such a person, so they kept running and deceiving themselves. Those who could face themselves honestly would have a firm and fearless heart. This was the foundation of cultivation. If they could not let go of the ideas and restrictions imposed by the outside world, it would be difficult to achieve anything. If you don't kill Song Jifan, how can you get the heaven murdering tactic? Song Wuji must have done something to the heaven murdering tactic. Even if Song Jifan cultivated it, it would be difficult to tell others. Even the Buddhist's eye of insight cannot sense it. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Hui Qing's words blocked his way. His omniscient mirror was similar to the Buddhist's eye of insight. Although it was stronger, it was still a type of divine power. If he could resist the Buddhist's eye of insight, he could also resist the omniscient mirror's prying. Could it be that the world is so big, but there's no way to get the heaven-murdering tactic? Chu Li frowned. There must be another way. Other way? Hui Qing thought for a while. It won't be easier than this. Then can you find the floating mountain? Chu Li asked. I can't. Hui Qing shook her head. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. If that's the case, thank you, I'll think of another way. But, Hui Qing said, the heaven-murdering tactic was not created by Song Wuji. Chu Li was excited. Hui Qing said, it's not even the Longevity Church's martial art. The Longevity Church's martial art is the ageless longevity technique. It's an evil and domineering martial art that complements the heaven-murdering tactic. Chu Li nodded slowly. The heaven-killing incantation consumed one's lifespan, while the unaging live forever ability increased one's lifespan. The two complemented each other to make up for the flaws of the heaven-killing incantation, while the unaging live forever technique made up for the flaws of the heaven-killing incantation and could be considered to have greater power. However, the art of ageless longevity increased one's lifespan by devouring others. Just the thought of it sent chills down Chu Li's spine. Chu Li felt uncomfortable all over. He would never use the art of ageless longevity on others. Hui Qing said, the murdering heaven art was originally a martial art of the Absolute Heaven sect. Absolute Heaven sect. Chu Li thought about it and shook his head. He had seen the ancient books in the 100,000 Spirit Mountains, but there were no records of the Absolute Heaven sect. It seemed that there was no such sect. Never heard of it? Hui Qing asked. Chu Li nodded. Actually, he has another name, Heavenly Demon Sect, Hui Qing said. Chu Li was stunned. Heavenly Demonic Sect? I think the Heavenly Demon Sect is still around, right? He had never expected it to be the Heavenly Demon Sect. He was still the sect leader of the Heavenly Demonic Sect, and his heavenly demonic power was almost perfected. However, he had never seen the murdering heaven art in the sect. Then, he remembered that he was not interested in the secret books of the Heavenly Demonic Sect back then. He only skimmed through them briefly before leaving. After that, he rarely returned to the Heavenly Demonic Sect and only gathered information through the disciples of the Heavenly Demonic Sect. The current Heavenly Demonic Sect is not the same sect as the original Heavenly Demonic Sect. Hui Qing scoffed. I know about the one you mentioned. There has never been an enlightened master. This is unimaginable in the Absolute Heaven sect. Chu Li asked, it's not the same sect? The current Heavenly Demonic Sect can only be considered a branch of the ancient Heavenly Demonic Sect. Hui Qing shook her head. I've gone to take a look. It's not a big deal. It's getting worse with each generation. It's doomed. Chu Li slowly said, how do I find the Absolute Heaven Sect? We can only think of a way from the Heavenly Demonic Sect now. Hui Qing answered, there should be some clues left behind. With your ability, it won't be difficult to find them. As for whether you can find the successor of the ancient Heavenly Demonic Sect, it'll depend on your luck. According to my speculation, the inheritance should still be there. Thank you, Master. Chu Li bowed deeply. Hui Qing said, you don't have to thank me. If it weren't for Shao Qi, I wouldn't care about your life or death. Chu Li smiled and nodded. He did not think that Hui Qing had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She was cold and indifferent. She did not care about others and did not even care about them. She felt that everyone had their own path and that they could decide their own life or death. Others should not interfere. If it were not for Shao Qi, she would not care about him at all. Speaking of which, it was all thanks to Shao Qi. Chu Li secretly laughed. Chu Li returned to the Heavenly Demonic Sect. However, there were no clues in the Heavenly Demonic Sect. He flipped through all the ancient books and talked to a few elders of the Heavenly Demonic Sect. They all had blank expressions on their faces. They didn't know about the existence of the heaven-severing sect. They had never heard of it before. Chuli was disappointed, but there was nothing he could do. He could not force them to say anything if they did not know about it. It seemed like Hui Qing was not too clear about it and only gave him a rough idea. He appeared outside the stargazing pavilion in the next second. It was noon when he stood at the foot of the stargazing peak. The bright sun shone warmly on his body. He stood with his hands behind his back and his white robe fluttered. A moment later, Li Xinghe, who was dressed in blue and had a handsome face, slowly appeared in front of him. He gave a fist salute and smiled bitterly. "Why are you here?" "I was passing by, so I dropped by to take a look." Chuli looked at him with a faint smile. Li Xinghe quickly said, "I've already done what you told me to do. Unfortunately, there's too much resistance, so I can only advance through rumors. It's finally effective. The enlightened masters are against Song Jifan." Chuli nodded. Not bad. Can you find the floating mountain?" "I've been keeping an eye on it." Li Xinghe smiled. "They actually moved thousands of miles away from their original spot. It's terrifying just thinking about it." "You know where they are?" Chuli was surprised. Li Xinghe slowly said, "On the ocean." Chuli nodded. "That's very safe. Are they not coming ashore anymore?" "They're hiding for a while." Li Xinghe said, "Song Jifan is probably cultivating some antique study. Once he masters it, he won't be afraid of you anymore and the floating mountain will naturally return." Chuli said, "Tell me, where is it?" "I'll bring you there personally." Li Xinghe said, "Otherwise it'll be hard to explain." Chuli nodded. Li Xinghe glided forward and said as he walked, "Does it feel good to kill celestials?" Chuli broke into laughter. Li Xinghe said, "But it's better not to kill celestials." Chuli sighed. "Many people have advised me not to kill celestials, but I can't help it. Do you know why so many celestials came down? It should be related to Azura." Li Xinghe looked up at the sky and lowered his voice. "They might have fought against Azura." Chuli frowned. "Celestials can't defeat Azura?" Chapter 1746. Chuli nodded slowly. He had guessed this as well. A war had broken out in the Outland, so the Grandmasters were required to ascend and become celestial beings to participate in the war. These Grandmasters were then used as cannon fodder. He did not believe that these celestial beings came down with good intentions. Even if they did, it would not be the people of this world. Li Xinghe said, "Based on what I know, there are many regions in the Outland. Just like our countries, Azuras occupy a region known as the Azura Realm. They are all bloodthirsty and immortal, which is a huge threat to the other celestial beings." Chuli asked, "Why did Azura suddenly declare war?" "Perhaps there's some conflict or a conflict of interest." Li Xinghe frowned and said, "Wars often happen very abruptly and catch people off guard. The reasons are often bizarre and unimaginable. However, I can conclude that they are fighting with Azura, and the situation is not optimistic. After all, celestials can still perish and be reincarnated, but Azura are indestructible. Is there really no way to kill Azura?" Chuli frowned. "There's no such thing as an invincible person in this world. There must be something that can restrain them. If there was yin, there must be yang, and if there was life, there must be death. This was the rule of heaven and earth. No matter how strong Azura was, there must be a way to kill it." Chuli firmly believed this, but he had not been able to find it. Li Xinghe shook his head. "Nobody knows. The celestial beings have been searching, but unfortunately," he sighed. "Brother Chu, don't waste your effort. As long as you kill them and suppress the heart of Azura, you can delay their resurrection." "How long can it be suppressed?" Chuli asked. 100 years. Li Xinghe said, "From what I know, even the most powerful force can only suppress the heart of Azura for 100 years. Once the time is up, Azura will naturally reincarnate into the Outland. Chu Li pondered. He suddenly understood why the Tempest Temple's heart of Azura would disappear and ascend to the Outland. It turned out that it had reached the limit of its suppression and was about to ascend to the Outland to reincarnate into the Azura realm. Both of them chatted as they traveled. Li Xinghe's feet seemed to shrink as he could travel several miles in a single step. Chu Li also shifted the void to follow him. After 2 hours, both of them arrived at a vast ocean. Li Xinghe said, "We'll find the floating mountain 100 miles to the south." Chu Li asked, "How did you find them?" "Naturally, we have our sect's unique power, divination." Li Xinghe smiled and said, "The disciples of the Changshan sect are powerful, but not all of them are. As long as we can find one, we can keep an eye on the floating mountain." Chu Li frowned at him. He had also tried to deduce the existence of the floating mountain, but it had been blocked by an invisible force. Why didn't Li Xinghe deduce it? He narrowed his eyes at Li Xinghe. "Extrapolate? Don't tell me you're just brushing me off?" "What do you mean?" Li Xinghe was stunned. Chu Li suddenly burst into laughter. "It's impossible to deduce their location. There's a force protecting them. It's not that I'm looking down on Stargazing Pavilion, but you won't be able to break through this force with your abilities." Fine. Li Xinghe smiled bitterly and said, "I can't hide it from you anymore. Our disciples are on the floating mountain." "Impressive." Chu Li could not help but laugh. "You actually managed to place a chess piece on the floating mountain. It's not our own ability, it's the previous sect leader's doing." Li Xinghe shook his head and sighed. "We're really getting worse with each generation. We're still far behind our ancestors." "Brother Li, you might have a chance to surpass them," Chu Li said. Li Xinghe shook his head. "I have at least this much self-awareness. I don't have the courage to move forward. I'm just an ordinary person who won't amount to much." Chu Li said, "Your current achievements aren't any worse than the previous sect leader, right?" "I'm still lacking a little," Li Xinghe replied. The two of them stopped at the seaside and did not continue forward. Chu Li knew the reason without asking. It was because the only thing needed to determine one's position on the sea was the stars. It was still daytime, so it was hard to see the stars. They had to sense it carefully, which was quite exhausting. It was better to wait until nighttime. They sat on a reef by the seaside and cultivated for a while. When night fell completely, the moon rose, and the sky was filled with twinkling stars. They got up and set foot on the sea. Under the moonlight, the sea was boundless. At first glance, it looked like a vast thicket of grass. However, when the surface of the sea swayed slightly, it displayed a tyrannical force that could move one's soul. It was enough to make one flinch. The two of them stepped on the surface of the sea as if it was flat ground. They walked forward step by step, still using the ground shrinking technique. In the blink of an eye, they were almost 100 miles away. Li Xinghe looked up at the sky and counted with his fingers before nodding. "We're up there." Chu Li said, "Go back first. Don't let them know." Li Xinghe nodded slowly. "Then be careful. The Longevity Church isn't that simple. There are many powerful people hidden, not just Song Jifan." Chu Li smiled. "It couldn't be better." As he spoke, he let out a long howl that traveled a few miles along the surface of the sea. "Song Jifan, show yourself." Li Xinghe was on his way back when he heard the howl. He shook his head helplessly. Was this not letting Song Jifan know in advance and be prepared? He might even escape in advance. He really did not know what he was thinking. Chu Li let out another long howl. "If you don't show yourself, don't blame me for throwing away the heaven-killing sword. I'll throw the heaven-killing sword into one of the valleys in the 100,000 hills. No one will be able to find it. Don't even think about getting the heaven-killing sword in this lifetime." Chu Li's voice was like rolling thunder that lingered in the night sky for a long time. Chu Li shouted again, "The heaven-killing sword is here. Song Jifan, Do you have the guts to come and take it? Don't you want the heaven-killing sword? It's right in front of you, yet you don't dare to come and take it. You should just obediently retreat to the floating mountain and be your bishop. Don't think about the longevity church dominating the world. Chuli laughed. Haha, what grand ambition! What a joke! Suddenly, a loud yell came from the laughter. Chuli, don't be so savage. Chuli stopped laughing and looked at Song Jifan, who appeared out of nowhere. He nodded in satisfaction. You've finally shown yourself. How rare. Did the floating mountain come here to avoid me? Avoid you? Song Jifan wore a green robe and a golden crown. Under the moonlight, he looked like a deity. He stepped in the void and sneered. You don't have the qualifications to make our floating mountain hide. Chuli laughed. Then why hide here? To avoid the celestials. Song Jifan said lightly. You know how annoying these celestials are. Chuli said, celestials are really annoying. You still want the heaven-killing sword? Song Jifan scoffed. You've thought it through and want to give me the heaven-killing sword? Chuli said, let's have a spar. If you can win, the heaven-killing sword is yours. If you can't, the heaven-killing art is mine. All right. Song Jifan agreed happily. I'll tell you in advance. Even if you get the heaven-killing art, you won't be able to cultivate it. Don't blame me for not telling you in advance. Chuli smiled. Why can't I cultivate it? Without the ageless longevity technique, you'll be dead before you can cultivate it. Song Jifan scoffed. Chapter 1747. Chuli frowned. The ageless longevity technique? Our faction's divine technique. Song Jifan said proudly. You won't have the chance to cultivate it, so you should give up on the heaven-murdering tactic. This is my good intention. Chuli smiled. Then add the ageless longevity technique and the heaven-murdering tactic together. If you lose, you have to pass the technique and the heaven-murdering tactic to me. What a joke. Song Jifan sneered. You have a good plan. Chuli said, if not, we don't have to bet. What, you want to go back on your word? Song Jifan scoffed with a cold face. Chuli, do you really think you can escape? Chuli turned his head to look. 4 young men appeared out of thin air. Their aura was thick like the mountains and the sea. They seemed to be one with the sea under their feet. Their breathing was the same and they absorbed the power of the sea. This made Chuli curious about the martial arts they cultivated. Song Jifan sneered. Chuli, you can only blame yourself for being too arrogant. We already hid here and you still chased after us. You're courting death. There's a path to heaven but you refuse to take it. There's no door to hell but you insist on squeezing in. Chuli frowned. Who are they? He could feel that the 4 young men's aura was strange and their cultivation level was high. More importantly, their temperament was vicissitudes. Their eyes were calm and relaxed, weary as if they were old men who had lived for a long time and could face death calmly. They did not have that kind of attachment to life. There's no harm in telling you. Song Jifan shook his head with a faint smile on his face. These 4 are the sect protectors. Each of their cultivation levels is higher than yours. Chuli frowned. 4 revered guardians? What antique study do they cultivate? He was most curious about this one. They could become one with the sea as if the sea was them and they were the sea. Hurting them was hurting the sea. If the sea was not hurt, they would not be hurt either. This feeling was very strange, but he thought it was real. He had to treat it seriously. The boundless ocean technique. Song Jifan said proudly. It's one of the unique skills of the Changshan denomination. It's 1 level higher than the bloody garment divine skill and the invincible heavenly king art. Since you're lucky enough to see it, you can die without regret. Chuli muttered, the boundless ocean power. He recalled the records in the ancient books in the cave of the 100,000 mountains. The boundless ocean divine art was a mystical art that could only be cultivated by observing the sea and living on the sea day and night. One's body and mind would become one with the sea, and one would completely comprehend the soul of the sea. After mastering the boundless ocean divine technique, as long as there was an ocean, there would be no need to worry about injuries or insufficient inner energy. The ocean was soft yet hard. The softness could neutralize injuries, while the hardness could destroy everything. Practitioners of the boundless ocean divine technique had endless inner energy and energy in the sea. They would not feel tired or exhausted, just like the god of the sea. It was truly terrifying. However, although this technique was extremely powerful, it was also extremely difficult to cultivate. However, once it was successfully cultivated, it would be like the ageless live forever technique, and one's lifespan would be extended. Song Jifan scoffed, "Have you heard of it?" Chu Li nodded and said, "So it's the boundless ocean power. I'm really impressed." It wasn't easy to cultivate the boundless ocean divine technique, and those who managed to do so were people worthy of respect. Song Jifan said, "If you obediently hand over the Sky Killer Sword, I can spare your life. If you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being merciless." Chu Li smiled and said, "Leader Song, you'll really spare my life?" "Why not?" Song Jifan said proudly. "I'll cripple your martial arts and you'll no longer be a threat to my faction. What's the harm in sparing your life? Have you decided now? Are you going to hand it over or not?" Chu Li smiled and said, "Let's continue with the bet. Same as before. If you win, I'll give you the Sky Killer technique. If you lose, give me the Sky Killer Sword." Song Jifan scoffed, "Forget about the ageless live forever technique, I won't pass it to you." Sigh. Chu Li shook his head and said, "If that's the case, I can only agree to it. Let's go with this. But with these four here, are they trying to go back on their words? What if you lose and still snatch my sword?" "Of course not," Song Jifan scoffed. "What kind of person do you think I am?" Chu Li smiled. "If that's the case, make your move." Song Jifan's expression was solemn. The moon in the sky suddenly shot out a ray of light and landed on him. His jade-like face glowed and his whole body was shrouded in the light. He slowly pulled out the long sword from his waist. The moon shot out another ray of moonlight and landed on the blade of the sword. The blade of the sword glowed. He looked like a celestial being. Both his body and the sword glowed and absorbed the essence of the moon. The vast power was like a surging tide. It was like a raging wave that pressed down on him, wanting to crush him. Chu Li's white robe fluttered as if he was standing in a strong wind. He did not expect Song Jifan to have such a huge improvement. It was twice as fast as before. The speed of his cultivation level was beyond imagination. If it was not for the spirit tiger's energy, he really would not have the power to resist. This improvement was too shocking. If this went on, he did not know if he could withstand it. It was no wonder he was so arrogant. The power of the Sky Killer technique was indeed extraordinary. Swoosh! A ray of light shot out from the sword. It ignored the existence of distance and instantly appeared in front of Chu Li. Chu Li lightly struck out with his palm. The sword light landed on his palm like a snake. The light twisted and struggled, but it couldn't escape from his palm. It slowly became weaker and weaker until it dissipated. Not a single bit of it was able to invade his palm. After cultivating the black tortoise power, the power of the indestructible body of titanium was even stronger. The sword energy of the Sky Killer technique could no longer invade the indestructible body of titanium. Song Jifan's expression changed slightly. The light was hidden and others could not see it. He was shocked. He did not expect this result. His strongest sword energy could not do anything to Chu Li. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Several rays of light landed on Chu Li. Chu Li waved his palms as if he was catching butterflies. He easily caught each ray of light and smashed them one by one. The light of the sword was extremely fast. It did not give anyone a chance to react. However, Chu Li was able to catch them one by one. The speed of his palm technique shocked Song Jifan. "Chief Song, is this all you've got?" Chu Li shook his head and sighed in disappointment. "Then why don't you just admit defeat?" "Humph." Song Jifan sneered. The light on his body suddenly flourished. The light on the sword also became brighter. In the end, it became as dazzling as the sun and could not be looked at directly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 rays of light instantly hit Chu Li. This time, Chu Li could not catch the light of the sword. 2 fell on his heart and 1 fell in front of his eyes. Chu Li stretched out his palms to cover his eyes. He did not manage to catch the remaining 2. When the 2 rays of light hit the center of his heart, they suddenly merged into one and pierced Chu Li's chest. Bang! Chu Li took a step back. Again. Song Jifan laughed. This attack was enough to make Chu Li suffer. No matter how strong he was, he still fell into his trap. His body burst with a dazzling light. The same was true for his sword. It was as if a sun had appeared in the sky, illuminating the surroundings. It was no different from daytime. The light reflected from the sea made it hard for people to open their eyes. The 4 young men stood silently on the sea as if they were standing on flat ground. They looked at Chu Li motionlessly. They stared at Chu Li's every move, looking for an opportunity to attack. Chapter 1748. The heaven-murdering scripture's sword aura hit his chest, and he felt a sudden pain. The sword aura was like 2 snakes drilling into his heart. Chu Li was shocked. He didn't expect the 2 sword auras to be so sharp. The sword aura that he blocked with his hand was obviously not strong enough. It was to distract him. The remaining 2 sword auras were his trump cards. They were so powerful that they broke through the indestructible body of titanium and went straight into his heart. The vermilion bird's fire in his heart was startled. It suddenly came out and swallowed the 2 sword auras. The vermilion bird's fire suddenly rose like a raging flame. The indestructible body of titanium's inner energy couldn't suppress it. Song Jifan saw that Chu Li's face didn't change and didn't show any signs of injury. He was a little angry. He didn't expect Chu Li to have reached such a realm. He was really his nemesis. He must kill him. Eat another one of my sword. The light on Song Jifan's body became even brighter. The sword aura shot out and ignored Chu Li's hand. It hit his heart again. Bang! Chu Li took another step back. Chu Li frowned. His heart hurt again as it was swallowed by the vermilion bird's fire again. Song Jifan's face began to age. He was already a middle-aged man. Chu Li knew that he used a secret skill to increase the power of the heaven-murdering scripture. If this continued, the power would become stronger and stronger. Chu Li wouldn't be able to withstand it. Eat one of my palm, Chu Li said calmly and struck out with his palm. Song Jifan couldn't avoid it and it hit his chest squarely. Bang! Song Jifan flew out as if he was hit by a giant wood. It was as if there was a string pulling him from behind. Song Jifan flew 100 feet above the sea and spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at Chu Li in disbelief. When he activated the heaven-murdering scripture, his body and the treasure sword in his hand became one. The treasure sword was him and he was the treasure sword. His body became like the treasure sword. It was indestructible and could cut through iron like mud. Chu Li's light palm strike contained a strange inner energy that directly injured him. His internal organs felt as if they were flipped over, and the energy in his body began to become chaotic. The spirit tiger's spiritual energy dimmed as if it was sucked out. Chu Li immediately sent the inner energy of the supreme titanium scripture into it for it to devour. In an instant it was replenished, even more so than before. Chu Li once again used the tiger taming technique and lightly struck out with his palm. The palm flashed and instantly appeared in front of Song Jifan. Song Jifan saw that the situation wasn't good, so he used his lightning manipulation steps to avoid it. He didn't dare to take on the strange palm energy. However, there was an invisible force binding him. Although he immediately broke free, he was delayed for a moment, so he couldn't avoid the palm. The palm collided with his left palm, and he was sent flying again. Pfft! He spat out another mouthful of blood and snorted angrily. What kind of demonic palm technique is this? It's just an ordinary palm technique. Chu Li smiled. How does it feel? Very good. Song Jifan sneered. Do you think you can defeat me with this damn palm technique? Why not? Chu Li asked. Song Jifan sneered, naive. Although the power of the palm was strange and domineering, and his internal organs had been seriously injured, his art of ageless live forever was very mysterious. After a few wrinkles appeared on his face, his injuries were immediately alleviated. Chu Li stopped and stood still, shaking his head. You can try. The sneer on Song Jifan's face froze. He realized that after using the ageless longevity technique to suppress his injuries were alleviated. However, the strange palm energy continued to destroy. In the blink of an eye, the years of his life that he had worked hard to save was gone, and his body deteriorated again. Song Jifan spat out another mouthful of blood and frowned at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. Do you admit defeat? The spiritual energy of a supreme spirit beast was not that easy to eliminate. It was as if they had a soul and could decide how to attack and what was the most effective. Moreover, it was almost impossible to eliminate. Admit defeat? Song Jifan clenched his teeth. What a joke. He suddenly aged as if he was an old man in his 60s. Even with the light covering him, it did not escape Chu Li's eyes. Chu Li shook his head. It's useless. Humph. Song Jifan sneered in disdain. His internal injuries suddenly reversed and healed as if he was not injured at all. Moreover, the strange palm energy had decreased a lot, leaving only a trace. The smile on his face grew wider. Just as he was about to open his mouth to mock Chu Li, his smile froze again. The trace of palm energy quickly devoured his body's strength. In the blink of an eye, it had grown to its previous level. Then, it heavily injured his internal organs again, even more severely than before. His internal organs were heavily injured and the strength in his body became chaotic again. The light flickered. His expression changed. If this continued, he would not be able to suppress the palm energy. Chu Li laughed. Still not admitting defeat? Song Jifan clenched his teeth and scoffed. Chu Li, what martial art is this? Chu Li said, Spirit Tiger Palm. I have never heard of this palm technique. Song Jifan clenched his teeth and scoffed. You win. All right, I admit defeat. Chu Li was stunned. Admit defeat? That's right. Song Jifan clenched his teeth. But you have to withdraw the palm energy. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Of course. Song Jifan extended his hand. Come on. Chu Li looked at him and slowly extended his left palm. He placed it on Song Jifan's right palm. As their palms intersected, Chu Li activated the tiger taming technique. Suddenly, a warm force entered Song Jifan's body. Once the spirit tiger's spiritual energy felt this warm force, it immediately withdrew its attack and entered the warm force. It was as if it had entered a hot spring and was sucked back into Chu Li's body. Song Jifan let out a long sigh of relief. The light on his face gradually dissipated, revealing his old face. Chu Li smiled. Can you tell me the heaven-murdering scripture now? No problem. Song Jifan scoffed. But I will only say it once. Don't blame me if you can't remember it. Chu Li nodded. He was a little surprised. He did not expect Song Jifan to admit defeat so easily and in such a straightforward manner. He was like a gentleman and did not act like an enemy at all. This was too unusual. But since things had come to this, Chu Li would not retreat. It was good enough that he could obtain the heaven-murdering scripture. The heaven-murdering scripture was too important to him. All of you, step down. Don't eavesdrop. Song Jifan turned his head and looked at the 4 young men. Sect leader. The 4 of them hesitated. Song Jifan scoffed and turned his head. Let's go somewhere else. Chu Li nodded. The 2 of them abruptly disappeared from the boundless ocean and appeared on the summit of a mountain, which was none other than the original entrance of the floating mountain. Song Jifan looked at Chu Li with a complicated expression. Chu Li, I'll say it again. Learning the heaven slaughtering technique might not be a good thing. Instead, it's a path to death. Chu Li smiled. Thank you for the reminder. I'd like to practice. All right then. Song Jifan snorted and said, I will definitely not hide anything or tamper with it. You can rest assured that I am not that despicable. I will definitely defeat you fair and square. Chu Li smiled. All right, I'll be waiting. Song Jifan snorted. The killing heaven art would definitely not be tampered with, because the backlash after tampering with it might not be that big. The original killing heaven art's backlash was the most ruthless and powerful. He coughed lightly and began to say, the heaven killing art's opening words are clear. Those who can destroy the heavens, kill the heavens. Song Jifan's enunciations were as clear as pearls, but his speed was extremely fast, like raindrops falling down. He was venting his frustrations, hoping that Chu Li would forget them. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.